a lot of camera gear around the house. But when I was 13, my parents gave me my very first DSLR with a big chunky frame and a zoom lens. I had a tiny point-and-shoot camera before that, but I was convinced something that could fit in my pocket would not be enough camera for our family vacation to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. The Rockies were unlike anything I'd ever seen growing up in the Midwest. And armed with my new camera, I took pictures of everything. The view from every scenic pullout, every wildflower, photogenic cloud, or notably large pine cone. But one picture from that trip that stands out in my memory is a photo I took of a moose. The first moose I'd ever seen, neck deep in a lake, holding its massive antlers above the water as it swam from one side to the other. It was gone within a few minutes, and my photo, looking back on it, wasn't all that impressive. But I think about that moose often as one of the first experiences I had with a wild animal, at least one bigger than a squirrel. It kickstarted a fascination I still have with the natural world and an appreciation of the power that photography has to capture moments like this. Wild animals in the wild. It's no wonder that cameras are one of the most common accessories you see around Glacier today. They are the lens, pun intended, through which many of us see and remember national parks. But cameras are also increasingly being used by scientists to study the same animals us visitors feel lucky to see, especially remote cameras, which trigger when they sense movement. These camera traps, as they're called, can reveal glimpses into a side of Glacier that we can never see. How wildlife behave when there are no people around. We are in the car.
Where are we going?
We're driving up the road out of East Glacier that heads towards Two Medicine, looking for a camera.
And what's the camera looking for?
The camera is looking for moose. Largest member of the deer family, very charismatic, big noses.
I feel like charismatic is debatable.
I love moose.
I think a lot of people love moose, and a lot of people think moose are one of the uglier creatures.
What? How could you think moose are ugly?
I'm not saying I think that, but I've heard people say that.
Gangly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Weird
Ugly?
little dewlap thing, dangling.
It's charming!
Some say charming.
You're listening to Headwaters, a show about how Glacier National Park is connected to everything else. I'm Michael. In this episode, we're zooming in on two different animals, one big and one small, one you may have seen and one you may have never heard of. They'll help us understand the increasing use of cameras in the field of wildlife biology and reveal that even if you leave no trace, you have a bigger impact on the natural world than you might think. We're turning just before the Two Med entrance, going off the pavement. Perry and I went out for a day to check on a wildlife camera with Landon McGee.
So my name's Landon McGee. I'm a master's student at the University of Montana in their wildlife biology program. I'm an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe.
We were joined by one of Landon's technicians, Ethan Rowe. The two of them are working for Blackfeet Nation Fish and Wildlife, leading a moose study on the Blackfeet Reservation and the eastern portion of Glacier National Park.
You know, they love kind of wet areas. People call them swamp donkeys just because they kind of similar body structure, and they like to hang out in the swamps and wade through the ponds and eat kind of some aquatic vegetation. You can find them along stream bottoms, creek bottoms, river bottoms.
And Landon, who has been placing cameras all over the place this year, was nice enough to take me and Perry to the easiest to reach camera in his whole study. Start walking.
Yeah, so we're just going to head about 50 yards into this big aspen stand here. So.
Great.
Sweet.
We'll follow your lead.
I mean, this looks like moose habitat.
Yeah.
Now, I find moose to be really interesting and not even slightly ugly. As the second largest mammals in North America, they're really strong. Bull moose's iconic antlers can grow up to 5 feet across, and they use those antlers to fight over female moose. Which is a great excuse to remind folks to stay 25 yards away from moose and other non-predator wildlife in the park.
Like any other animal, give them their distance, just let them do what they need to. It's, the added stress of people trying to get up close just puts more stress on them that they don't really need. And so.
But at the same time, moose are seen as gentle giants. We see them as being so friendly that they usually have Canadian accents in movies. Like the Disney movie, Brother Bear.
Look, I am sorry.
If I was driving, this never would have happened,
Oh,
eh?
just stop
You never
it.
let me drive, you never let me do nothing.
Oh, trample off, eh? I said I was sorry. Let it go.
I can't believe you totaled a mammoth, eh?
And maybe this blend of strength and friendliness can help explain why moose are so popular. We ran a People's Choice Awards contest on Glacier's Instagram a few years ago, and moose were voted the most popular animal in the park, beating mountain goats and grizzly bears. But despite all their charisma and their massive size, we don't actually know much of anything about how they're doing as a species around Glacier.
We really didn't know what their status of the moose population was on the reservation, and then the park hasn't done like any kind of moose study, I think somewhere close to 60 years. So they really didn't know anything about their moose population currently either, and so Blackfeet had listed it kind of as a species of interest. And yeah, I guess, snowballed into this project.
I checked. There haven't been any moose studies in the park in 60 years. But Landon's changing that. His study is measuring the moose population on the Blackfeet Reservation and much of the east side of Glacier. And to do that, he placed cameras like the one we're at today throughout his study area. And all of the cameras were placed at random.
Sitting down and trying to pick, 100 camera locations of where, would be good spots, it would be very time consuming and hard to do. And of course, it introduces a lot of bias. And so having this truly random sampling allows you to get into places you thought you'd never go your whole life. I know there's been a few that I've been to, both summers so far. And so
we're visiting this easy-to-reach camera to make sure it's still working. Landon's technician, Ethan, walked us through the checkup.
So when we're arming the camera, we like to put it waist high. So it would just sit like somewhere right here. Better view down
high
there.
on a moose.
Yeah. So right now we're doing a revisit. So we're just checking up on the camera. Just if the camera was still functional, if we changed the memory card at all, and if we did, the idea of it.
The downside of randomly distributing your cameras, though, is that while some are 50 yards off the road and easy to hike to while holding a microphone, others require miles of bushwhacking through areas with no trails. Honestly, it sounds a little heinous, but that hasn't deterred Ethan.
Hikes are a big plus of it,
Are you sure?
So I really enjoy the hike sometimes, even though I like to complain along the way. I think when I'm done with it, I really tell Landon, really appreciate it out here.
With these randomly placed cameras set far enough apart to avoid double counting the same moose during a certain time frame, Landon can run all the data through a computer model to estimate how many moose live here. And the data isn't just a bunch of ones and zeros. It's pictures, which for Landon has been fun to look through, but a lot of work. With, dozens of cameras out at a time, like how many pictures do you capture over the course of a summer?
last year we did 100 cameras, and I think with all those we had just a little over 2 million photos.
2 million?
Yeah. Thinking about that, these cameras are set to both motion detection, so anything that walks by, grass blowing, anything will set it off. But it also takes a picture every 15 minutes, part of a time-lapse function on the camera. So it has both those modes going the entire summer. So
2 million. How do you go through that?
a lot of time bent over at a computer.
Blowing grass, waving branch, blowing grass. Moose? He had some research assistants to help sort through these images, and some companies are even marketing AI tools that promise to speed up the process. But despite manually sifting through 2 million photos, Landon was excited about the results.
I guess looking through the cameras last year, there was a lot more sightings than I had anticipated. We were a little worried that we weren't going to get a whole lot of moose detections just because of how, just having these cameras in the middle of nowhere, and what are the chances of a moose, walking by my camera in such a large area.
Landon emphasized that one of the things he loves about these photos is you get to see how moose behave when there's no one around to watch.
One of the cooler photos or videos we had on the video cameras we had out last year was a moose calf nursing, and you could hear like the sucking noise of the calf just going to town.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It's probably the best video I have.
This is the audio from that clip. To paint the picture, the calf is mostly hidden by thimbleberry bushes as it reaches up to its mom. An adult female moose can easily be 6 feet tall and weigh 1,000 pounds, while a newborn calf weighs as much as a small dog, like a corgi.
And just getting, that first-hand view into, what their life looks like when nobody's out here. There's probably been some areas where they've never seen a human or big gray box strapped to a tree, and so seeing what they do and how they interact with that's been pretty cool.
I guess just as a baseline, like why use cameras as a tool in the first place instead of like going out in the field and sitting around all day?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm trying to do can be accomplished with more invasive techniques like collaring, capturing, chemical mobilization, helicopter. All that's just really invasive, kind of stresses the animal out a lot and also costs a lot of money.
As with so many things, the biggest factor is cost. There are a lot of species deserving of study and relatively little money to go around. So you have to have a good reason to get a wildlife study funded. For Landon's, it's the fact that moose hunting funds a lot of conservation work on the Blackfeet Reservation. Blackfeet Nation Fish and Game, along with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, issue a small amount of moose tags every year. Permits to hunt a moose on tribal, state, or federal land, but to be clear, not in Glacier National Park.
They do an auction system, and so they bid on the tag, and I think the starting bid for moose is like $14,000, and we usually get it up to like $35,000 for a moose tag.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge source of revenue for the department.
By better understanding the number of moose on the Blackfeet Reservation, Fish and Game can issue an appropriate number of tags without fear of harming moose populations as a whole. And on top of that, we'll also get insight into the moose in Glacier, which speaks to one of the appealing traits of camera traps. They're pretty cheap. High-quality cameras are getting less expensive every year, and the only expense beyond that is the time it takes to install and remove them. Landon, Ethan, and their small team can realistically study a huge area.
Moose don't know political boundaries, so you're gonna have moose that are going back and forth, and whether you're gonna get them on the reservation during your time sampling is gonna be difficult to predict, and so having cameras in the park kind of allows you to understand that transboundary movement.
Yeah. Landon's work stands to help Glacier and the Blackfeet Nation manage moose, but his study is still underway, so there's no population estimate for him to report just yet.
People always tell me that, how many moose are out there?
Let me get back to you in a couple of years.
Give me 2 years, I'll let you know.
We'll have to stay tuned to see what Landon learns down the road. But you don't have to wait to see the results of a camera study. You just have to look to another animal.
So they have these very specialized adaptations for living in the deep powdery snow environment. I don't know. I mean, they're cats. Cats are kind of weird.
This is Alyssa Anderson. Starting in 2019 as a grad student at the University of Montana, Alyssa led a camera trap study of a mammal in Glacier that is far more elusive than moose, the Canada lynx. Have you ever seen a lynx in person?
I have only seen a lynx associated with a live trap for research, so I consider that to be cheating. I did work for one winter trapping for research. You walk up to the trap, and they just, I had one lynx that literally, I think it was singing death metal to me.
It's rare to see any wildcat in Glacier. This summer, after 10 years of working and living here, I finally saw my first mountain lion. And they're 4 times bigger than lynx are.
It's funny, and then you get all these tourists who go to Glacier for one day and send you these videos, and they're like, hey, is this a lynx? And I'm like, oh my God, I've hiked that trail 10 million times. You have no idea how lucky you are.
But while I'd guess few park visitors have even heard of Canada lynx, they're a really fascinating animal, and they're perfectly suited to live in Glacier.
They are a specialized cat species that has evolved to live in what we call the boreal forest. So, mostly across Canada, Alaska, and then the boreal forest does reach down a little bit into the lower 48. Part of their specialization is that they specialize in eating snowshoe hare. It's the vast majority of their diet.
Lynx and their favorite food, the snowshoe hare, both have huge feet relative to their body weight, which allows them to run on top of deep snow. I found a great example of this in a 1976 documentary called Day of the Lynx. In the clip, filmed in the winter, you see a coyote sneaking up on a snowshoe hare.
A coyote has been diligently following the trail of a snowshoe hare. It flushes, running in the direction of the big lynx.
Then you see the lynx. Tall tufts of black hair on their pointed ears, comically large feet, poised and waiting.
It can run atop the snow, unlike the coyote, who breaks through the crust and travels slower. The coyote stays doggedly on the trail, but he's too late. The lynx has made the kill.
Glacier has seen less and less snow over the years since the park was established. The park gets 30 fewer days each year of freezing temperatures compared to 1980, the equivalent of a month that used to be freezing cold that now isn't. So for lynx, this cold-adapted animal, climate change is a huge concern, big enough that they were listed under the Endangered Species Act. Their threatened status encourages groups like our very own Glacier National Park Conservancy to fund lynx research, like Alyssa's.
The main facet was what we call an occupancy survey. So where are we detecting them? What kind of areas are occupied by lynx?
Landon is studying moose by counting them, since he's doing a population estimate. In contrast, Alyssa's study wasn't designed to count lynx, but to figure out where they live and where they don't. And she focused her cameras on park trails.
Like a lot of carnivores have been found to use human trails. You'll have a higher probability of detecting by putting cameras on trails.
They can get anywhere much faster on trail.
Yeah, and so having cameras on trail means that you can put cameras out without using any kind of bait or lure, and still have, decent probability of detecting carnivore species or these more rare elusive species.
Landon's randomly placed cameras make sense for his population estimate and works well in part because moose are 6 feet tall. Lynx, on the other hand, are just 2 feet tall and would disappear in a lot of Glacier's brush. Focusing on trails is a great way to spot lynx. It works great for Alyssa's occupancy study and helps her avoid most of the bushwhacking that Landon has to do. But she still used a lot of cameras.
So we used 305 cameras for the lynx occupancy study, 4 cameras per cell across the whole park, basically.
And searching through these images, it wasn't just lynx she got pictures of.
I think my favorite was porcupine. I think we got, 13 porcupine.
Wow.
Which is the same number that we got bobcat. We got hardly any bobcat, and more porcupine than I expected.
Porcupines are another poorly understood animal in Glacier. Ever since the 80s, they've been an increasingly rare sight, and nobody's really sure why. Data from Alyssa's lynx-focused work could contribute to separate research on porcupines or other species in the park.
So we also have this big trove of data on every other species of wildlife that happens to use trails in Glacier, which is a really cool and powerful part of cameras, I think.
But of course, she also saw a lot of lynx. In total, they captured 404 images of lynx, and the cats showed up on 25% of the cameras she put out throughout the park. Many images were simply lynx walking by, but others were more unique.
But we did get one set of photos of a lynx walking by with 3 little kittens running around in front of her with their little tails sticking up and just looking cute. So that was cool. We got one photo of what looks like to be a juvenile snowshoe hare of the year running in front of the camera being chased by a lynx, which was super crazy. Really lucky.
Oh, and I'm sure they run out of frames. You never know what happens.
Yeah, I don't know who, but they were very close, within 2 feet of each other. So I have a feeling that young one didn't make it. But.
And this study in Glacier adds to a larger body of research in northwest Montana. The audio of a lynx vocalizing that we shared earlier came from a monitoring project looking for rare carnivores in the Swan Valley south of Glacier. It was shared with us by the Southwest Crown Collaborative and Swan Valley Connections. Knowing where lynx live now allows us to notice when and how they're impacted by climate change and other stressors. And that'll help the park manage for their success. And these photos have also been exciting for park visitors and employees because they're a window into the hidden lives of our wildlife.
We got a handful of wolverine, I think maybe 12 or something, and that's always fun. You never see so many of these animals, or very rarely, and it's just a really cool way to just, see what all is around you and using the same trails that you're using. It's sort of funny. There were a couple times when you'd just going through the photos, blah, 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 and organizing and be like a grizzly bear. Or even once, I think, a lynx, within minutes of a human.
Really?
Like on the exact same spot. You're like, wow, I wonder how that worked out. Yeah.
The Day of the Lynx, during what we call the Day of the Lynx.
But Alyssa's research also revealed another, more surprising conclusion.
Yeah, so basically more or less half of the east side of the park stayed closed to the public in 2020.
Because of the timing of Alyssa's study, 2019 through 2021, her work overlapped with the arrival of COVID-19. And because of the pandemic in the summer of 2020, half of Alyssa's study area was closed to the public. As a precaution to limit the spread of COVID, the Blackfeet Reservation shut down, and the park, who shares a boundary with the reservation, closed its eastern entrances to support that precaution. Areas west of the Continental Divide remained open, but eastern entrances like St. Mary, Many Glacier, and Two Medicine were closed. This posed a roadblock for Alyssa's research, but there was an agreement that allowed for limited administrative use, so long as nobody stopped on the reservation, even for gas. And Alyssa's research made the cut.
So we were very fortunate and grateful to be able to continue our work on the east side during the summer of 2020, and it did provide a really unique opportunity, sort of more of an experimental design.
It was a perfect setup for an experiment she never could have arranged otherwise. 1 year of data with wildlife and people, and 1 year with wildlife and no people.
We had cameras out in the same exact location during the same time period, different years, but June 15th till August 15th or whatever in 2020, and also in a year when the park was open to the public and there were thousands of people and hundreds of people every single day walking in front of those locations. So we were able to compare wildlife activity and presence and detection in those two different scenarios.
Right away, comparing the open and closed years revealed a pattern.
For the most part, most of the findings were that when there's fewer people around, the animals were being detected more frequently or in more different places. I think some of the ones that were strongest were elk and coyote.
Coyotes were seen way more often when there weren't people around.
Coyote kind of surprised me, honestly, because, they're kind of a generalist species and they can, get used to stuff. And
you see pictures in some communities where they're riding the subway.
Yeah, right.
So you'd think they'd be more kind of comfortable.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me that they had such a strong negative reaction to increased human use.
That same trend was observed in a lot of animals, including lynx, moose, bighorn sheep, and black bears. Although it wasn't true of every species. Foxes were the opposite. The probability of detecting a red fox was higher in the summer with people on trail.
So, one theory could be we found more foxes because we were finding fewer coyotes, and coyotes are dominant over foxes. And so that's, an explanation. I think that's super interesting.
This is something I feel like I and a lot of folks have an anecdotal understanding of. It feels like deer like to be around people, whereas you're encouraged to make noise on trail so you won't run into a bear, as bears generally don't want to be around us. But when that personal experience becomes a statistically significant research conclusion, it made me reconsider the impact I have on this place. It's tempting for me to imagine if you're following all the principles of leave no trace, hiking up to Avalanche Lake, you're not disturbing anything. The park is kind of behaving as it would be if you weren't there. And your paper seems to imply that that's not true.
Even if you don't hit an animal with your car, or you're not hunting an animal, or you're not throwing rocks at an animal, or your dog's not chasing an animal, simply by existing on the landscape and walking on trails. I mean, we do have an influence on wildlife activity patterns and space use simply just by being there.
This hits at the core of the Park Service's mission, to preserve and protect the natural world here while also providing for the enjoyment of visitors. Two goals that seem to be in tension with one another, a dual mandate at odds with itself.
So it's a really interesting conundrum. I think you were saying sort of the dual mandate of the park, right? I'm certainly not going to advocate for closing the park forever to people. I think that's insane.
Right.
I think it is kind of interesting to imply that that's necessarily bad. I don't want to say that that's necessarily bad, like humans have existed on this landscape with all of these animals, forever. It's interesting, and it's something that I think, now we certainly need to think about and consider a little bit more carefully, because we have millions of people, hiking down some of these trails, over the course of just a 3-month period.
I've talked for years with visitors and colleagues about this tension in the NPS mission, but I'd always pictured it applying to large-scale management decisions, like wanting to build a new parking lot. It felt like something I could avoid on a personal level by doing the right thing, which, in hindsight, feels a little naive. I like working here because I felt like my work can have a positive impact. But Alyssa's study left me wondering if the best thing I could do for lynx and moose is leave. But at the same time, the reason I care about wildlife is because of experiences I've had in nature. Experiences in national parks, like that mediocre photo I took of the first moose I'd ever seen. And it's unlikely so many people from around the world would care about this remote corner of northwest Montana if they'd never been here, if they'd never had the chance to connect with it on a personal level, to go hiking in the mountains, to see wildlife in the wild, forming memories that'll last a lifetime. Finally, the only way for Glacier to responsibly manage animals like moose and lynx is to understand them, which takes research. Sending passionate, curious people out into the park to learn more.
Yeah, that was my first camera I did by myself, I guess it's just the bird leaving the nest.
People like Ethan, the wildlife tech working with Landon on the moose study. After 2 summers with Landon, Ethan is pursuing a degree in wildlife biology this fall at the University of Montana.
I always wanted to be out here and doing this type of work, and I think that's a big motivation for me is that, not a lot of people are out here, and that, as me and him just trying to make a new step into history.
Moose pioneers.
I guess it's the idea of, do we only care about species for the viewing enjoyment of the public, or do we care about them for their intrinsic value on the landscape and also for their important ecological roles? And if you care about that, then you care about every species.
Alyssa's research suggests that even treading lightly, we will have an impact on the natural world here. It's unavoidable. But if we can accept that, it encourages us to think about the kind of impact we would like to have.
Headwaters is a production of Glacier National Park and is supported by the Glacier National Park Conservancy. We could not make this show without them. You can learn more about what they do at glacier.org. Headwaters is made possible with help from Lacey Kowalski, Melissa Slottick, and so many people throughout the Glacier community, especially the natural and cultural resource teams. We're grateful for all of you. Our music this season is by the brilliant Frank Waln. The show's cover art is by our sweet friend Stella Null. Check out Frank and Stella's work at the links in our show notes. Special thanks this episode to Landon McGee, Ethan Rowe, Alyssa Anderson, Mark Beal, John Waller, and Swan Valley Connections and the Southwest Crown Collaborative for sharing their amazing lynx growls. Besides sharing this episode with a friend who might appreciate it, you can help us out by leaving us a rating and review in your podcast app. Thanks for listening.
Hello, Rocky Mountain National Podcast listeners. We join you yet again for another great episode. A couple quick announcements before we begin. First, we have got a big pavement preservation project. So that means people are going around in the park and working on our pavement to keep it in good shape now and in the future. That's going on in the park and is going to be creating delays and closures over the next couple of weeks. Areas impacted are changing daily, so it's not just one area for the whole time. It's changing every day and are too complicated to cover in detail here, but you can get the full details on our website. Point your browser to nps.gov/ROMO. That's ROMO, nps.gov/ROMO. Look for alerts at the top of the page, and then find the alert related to pavement preservation and click more. That will take you to a news release that has the full details and a big old list to help you plan your trip. Second, monsoon season has been in full effect recently, with heavy thunderstorms rolling in nearly every afternoon. As always, please check the weather before your visit. Plan any hikes so that you are below tree line and away from dangerous areas before storms are set to arrive, and never leave the safety of a building or your car if thunderstorms are present. Stay safe out there. We know that thunderstorms are a common thing, and so it's easy to get complacent, but when you're here up in the high country and on the edge of rocky areas, people have been struck by lightning and even killed by lightning in Rocky, so please take it seriously. And now for our episode. This week we are joining Kyle Patterson, Rocky's Public Affairs Officer, to talk about what in the heck a public affairs officer does, the importance of sharing Rocky's amazing news and messages with the news and with you, and current issues at the park, and also what you can do to help us keep Rocky beautiful now and in the future. It was a super fun episode. Kyle's really fun to talk to, and I'm sure that you're going to learn a lot of neat things and hopefully enjoy yourself. So here we go. Enjoy the show. Yeah, so the way it goes, it's very
Okay. Very good.
Just talk about whatever. Okay.
We can do that.
We can do that. All right, so what is your name and what do you do here at the park?
My name is Kyle Patterson, and I'm the Public Affairs Officer here at Rocky Mountain National Park.
Public Affairs Officer.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to try to use the listener's mind.
Perfect.
And think the way that they would think. What the heck is a public affairs officer? What does that mean? What do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do?
And it depends on the day. That's one of the reasons I love my job is
That's
what
true.
I do can vary greatly depending on the day. But my main job duties is media relations. So basically news releases for the park, proactive stories on different things that we do here at the park and our colleagues and the amazing things they do. And then some of what I do can be very reactive. So Rocky Mountain National Park is one of the top 5 search and rescue parks in the country. And so we all might have this perfect list of what we're going to check off that day. And then that gets changed very quickly and very dramatically with some of the incidents we have in the park. So some of what I'm sharing with the public as well is very reactive and highlighting some of the incidents that happen in the park and what our colleagues do to help folks, and also some of the preventative search and rescue messages so that hopefully if people are informed and educated and prepared, we won't have as many situations. So that's a big part of what I do is media relations. And then I also do a lot of community outreach. So giving presentations and programs to a variety of organizations and groups and members of the public and a variety of different forums.
Okay.
That's a big part of my life. And then I've got a lot of other duties as assigned as well.
So you're kind of the, are you the official voice of Rocky, or you're kind of the official word?
I
Is
am
that how it works?
I'm the official voice.
Okay.
Some people call me the mouth.
The
I'm not
mouth.
quite sure what that means or what,
Maybe they're Lord of the Rings fans, like the mouth of Sauron. You Lord of the Rings fan? Not that much. That's a little deep, yeah. Some of our listeners will get it. You're like the mouth of Sauron, except instead of a horrible, evil eye living on a tower, it's Rocky Mountain National Park. Much better job.
Much better job.
Yeah, much better job.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Can look myself in the mirror. I'm not quite sure that
Right.
mouth could.
Yeah. No, definitely not. That's interesting. So the proactive versus reactive.
Right.
Yeah. So the reactive stuff is probably what people can imagine most easily. Like, like you said, search and rescue. We've been posting some search and rescue videos and news releases and trying to summarize all of that sort of thing. What's that like when you hear about something going on, and then how does that whole process unfold? You get called at like 4 a.m. and they say, Kyle, how's it going?
So it depends on the level of the incident, but I'll be notified anytime we have any kind of incidents in the park, just as more of a heads up.
Okay,
and
so you're basically getting calls every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And all hours of the day. It depends. Certainly, fortunately, we don't have a lot of incidents that are happening overnight, but we certainly have incidents that start in the day and last overnight. And so a lot of it is, again, wanting to proactively share the stories of what our colleagues are doing to assist visitors that get into trouble or become injured. We have tragedies that happen in the park as well. So trying to share the story in a kind way as well is really important.
Yeah, that protects people's privacy and protects all sorts of things involved. Yeah, that must be challenging.
It is challenging, and since our incidents vary so much depending upon what people are doing and where they are, some of our search and rescue incidents, in fact, most of them are, people doing the right things, being prepared, and just, having a horrible thing happen to them somewhere in the park. And so usually it's not egregious that people are doing something and then things happen.
Yep.
And
there's objective risks
there,
out here.
There are, and
that's
there's
part of why people come.
there are a lot of risks, and falls are the number one injury in Rocky, and they're the number one cause for fatalities in Rocky. Well, when you work and live in a place called Rocky Mountain National Park, rocks are not very forgiving.
No.
And I think also just through the years you realize how fragile we are as human beings when things happen.
Doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much.
Doesn't even take that far of a fall.
No, it really doesn't. And so, certainly being try to be very professional and kind when sharing the story, and also knowing that this is a person that this has happened to, who have family and friends who, again, whether it's a tragedy, which fortunately we don't have very many when you think of the level of visitation we have in the park.
Yeah, as a percentage. Yeah,
as a percentage, it's really low. But then also just being mindful of some of the severe injuries we've had in the park and incidents we've had in the park as well. And so certainly those stories get a lot of attention. And we also have a lot of stories that we share with members of the public that aren't necessarily kind of those dramatic search and rescue incidents that people are just as interested in. So that's my favorite part of my job, is to be able to help tell those stories and help our colleagues tell those stories. Because even though I'm the spokesperson and the voice of the park, we've got a lot of amazing people, as that work here, that are very articulate, that do amazing things.
I mean, that's pretty much the genesis of this podcast idea, is just being around park staff. You're just kind of like, wow, there's so many. They're just interesting people anyway, and their jobs are so interesting. And I think that's what can be challenging, just from the perspective of people even working here. It's hard for even us who work here to keep track of and recognize all the cool things that people are doing, because there's so much going on. Like, how many permanent employees do we have?
There is so much going on. We have about 160 permanent
year-round, and then seasonal.
And then we have about 210 seasonal rangers.
So it's a big workforce.
It is.
And we're pretty spread out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on at headquarters, but even there, people are out in the park. I hear about stuff all the time. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't hear about that.
Right.
So that sounds like the most fun part to me. I mean, the reactive thing that you're talking about, where you're reporting on incidents, kind of breaking news that people want to know about, is obviously very important and can take a lot of time. But yeah, that's neat thinking about it from like finding stories that are going on and finding ways to highlight them. And finding stories too, I feel like a lot of times you find stories that do that, but also educate at the same time.
Right.
Educate visitors. Could you talk a little bit about that part?
You bet. So, just the voices that we talk about too, and why it's great that we're having an opportunity to hear different voices through the podcasts, and just the experience level and passion that so many of our colleagues have. I love to be able to share those stories. And so it's great that we're using podcasts as another avenue to do that. That's my biggest regret, I think, at the end of each day, is not having enough time to be able to, this is a cool story, I want to highlight this. This is a great story, I want to highlight this. And or trying to grab staff to help share those stories, but that's not their primary mission of their particular
exactly.
position.
Right.
So they're like, I'd love to talk about it, but
Yeah.
I've got to go
Right.
tackle non-native species,
Yeah,
or I have to go
exactly.
deal with, an elk in an exclosure.
Right.
I have to, and so
Right. It's
part
like,
of
can
it
I
is
get 3 hours
just,
of your time? And they're like, no, I don't have it.
I would love to tell you my story. I don't
Yeah.
have time to tell you my
Exactly.
story. So if we
Especially in
can,
the summer.
absolutely. So if we can help gather some of that for people to tell the story,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. And we'll never have enough time to share the stories. And I mean, as I just sit here now and just think about all of our different divisions and all of our different work units and all of the different tasks that people have, it's mind blowing. I mean, we're basically a city.
We are. Yeah, I don't know if
And-
people realize. I was talking to, we had a class of designers, like graphic design, but also industrial design, which is interesting, who were here for a week. And I recorded with them like last Friday, I think it was. And that was one of the questions they had for me earlier. I just sat and talked with them, was like, what are all the different things people do here at the park? And it was hard for me to even remember, honestly. I would go through a big list, like, oh, we have interpretation, and then we have education, which is separate because it's curriculum based, and then we have law enforcement commissioned people, and then we have backcountry people and backcountry crews. But then I started thinking, I was like, wait, we have researchers like in all these different fields, and people managing elk, and people managing sheep and plants, and managing grants, and everything down to like sanitation and janitorial, which is so important. And I think people don't even think about it. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit.
Yeah,
But, actually, we could talk about it now. I mean, I think we have some challenges that are emerging at Rocky, so we can talk about some of those too. But definitely we basically are a city.
We are.
I mean, there's very few things that we don't do.
Right.
There's a few just because we have Estes Park and Grand Lake.
Right.
So we're not like when I worked in Denali or something, where it's
Right.
literally like you are your own services, period.
Right.
But we're pretty close.
We are. And we're really fortunate here that we have the amenities,
Yeah.
like the lodging and the restaurants and all of that is in our surrounding communities. So that's one less thing that we have to be looking at as far as just an infrastructure
And
aspect.
that's a good. You spend a lot of time working with gateway communities, right?
I
Could you
do.
talk about that?
I do. We're really fortunate at Rocky to have great relationships with our surrounding communities.
Mm-hmm.
And Grand Lake on our west side, Estes Park on our east side. And those partnerships are really, really vital to Rocky Mountain National Park. It's very much a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, it has to be.
In both kind of the tourism promotional aspect of both of those communities, as well as the town management of both of those. So we work closely with both the town management and the staff that help run the towns, and then also the tourism outlets of both of those areas as well, just to continue to make sure that, one of the common goals that we both have is to continue to make the visitor experience of our mutual visitors. Oftentimes they call them guests. We call them visitors. Just a little bit difference in semantics.
Yeah,
but
Park Service lingo versus town lingo.
Absolutely. And so part of that is making sure that we're doing the best we can for setting visitor expectations, and more with our significant increase in visitation, that becomes more and more important to set those visitor expectations and to really highlight that plan ahead message, and that things have changed here drastically over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and we have so much interface too with them. It just on a practical level, like in Estes Park with the shuttles. There's the town shuttles, and then our shuttles, and they overlap and so to some degree. And figuring out all of that, and messaging is a big one. I know. So we'll talk about some of the challenges facing Rocky. We'll talk about that. Before we do that, how did you become a public affairs officer? How did that happen? How did you get it? Because it's so interesting talking to, I feel like everyone we've talked to, and I'm sure it will continue. It's just like, how did we end up in these roles? A lot of times we don't even know until we think about it. But how did you get into public affairs?
Absolutely. You look back and say, this is exactly what I knew I wanted to do, and I graduated. Well, I had no idea. It's something that I have a marketing degree. And so it's one of these situations where I knew that no matter what job I had, as I grew up, I wanted to be passionate about what I did. And so I feel very grateful and fortunate that that's what I get to do every day. But, certainly I was in the right place at the right time with the right experience that got my foot in the door. And I started at Mount Rushmore at a time when they were just completing a major redevelopment project.
Oh, was that when they did like that huge parking structure?
Yeah,
everything.
Everything was changed. The visitor center,
huge.
the amphitheater, presidential walking trail, their facilities of, again, their concession area and their visitor center, and then parking structure. So in the mid to late 90s. So it was all complete around 1998.
Yeah, because I went, when was that? Early 2000s, and you can tell that everything was kind of brand new.
It was.
Brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new.
Yeah. So you were there around that
I
time.
was there during that time.
Exciting.
So it was really exciting. And most of that was funded by their friends organization.
Okay.
And so pretty amazing that a lot of that was not actually used federal funds. But so there was a lot of outreach around that, a lot of national media attention when all those changes were made, a lot of recognition of a lot of the donors that contributed to that. And so, again, being in the right place at the right time with the right experience, I had a background of both public relations, special events coordination, and marketing in some financial institutions. So all of that mixed together got me in the door. And so I was at Mount Rushmore for a couple of years.
Were
and
you
then
the public affairs officer
I
there
was.
as well? Okay.
Public affairs officer. And then I've been at Rocky for 16 years in this position.
Wow, okay. So you were there for a few years and then came here.
Came here,
okay.
yeah. So that's kind of what got me in the door. And most national parks don't have public affairs officers.
No.
It's either a collateral duty that someone else does on the side,
or it's one person for like a whole group of parks. Or something.
Yes. Like that. But a lot of the larger parks like Rocky do have at least one person dedicated.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
One person dedicated to a variety of the roles that we play here. So that's kind of my story.
Okay. So you're at University of Wyoming in Laramie.
Yes, in business school. So I switched.
I
switched. The wind seems to follow me miles wherever I go.
Yeah,
I
you
must
just can't
have
get away.
had an issue with wind
Laramie,
somewhere.
Black Hills, and then Estes Park. Okay.
So certainly Laramie and Estes has made me even stronger when it comes to wind. But certainly it was still in the business school, and then I went into marketing and seemed like a better match.
Yep, better fit.
And I think also then what do you do with a marketing degree?
Sure.
In a way, because there's some of
So
the
many
possibilities
things you could
are
do,
limitless.
Yeah.
And so again, that's when I was like, if I promote or highlight something, I want it to be something that I can feel really good about promoting and highlighting. And so again, that's why I feel really grateful, because I'm so passionate about the National Park Service mission as a whole.
Right.
And again, as we continue to see some of the challenges and opportunities that we have facing us here, I think it's another way too to just engage people at helping be part of the solution.
Yeah, I feel the same way with my job, doing design and communication. It's great to be able to do something that you believe in and has a purpose behind it that you can really get behind. And I remember one of my coworkers at Harper's Ferry Center, who is a designer, and this is no slight to anyone who does this for a living. I'm just talking about her specifically. She was like, yeah, before I got this job, I was designing packages for like diapers. And now I'm doing design for National Park Service brochures. It's a different feeling. And she was like, that worked better for me. I was like, yeah, I can see that.
Right. Absolutely.
Same here. So
did you get a degree in graphic design? Is that what did you know you were going to be a graphic designer?
No, I did
Is anybody asking Miles these questions?
No, but it's good. I'm glad. It's good. More back and forth. No, that's a good question. I was just like pretty much, I didn't do any hiking stuff or outdoor stuff growing up. I just stayed inside and read books and played piano. And so I did piano and chorus and jazz band and marching band, just all music and stuff. And so when I went to undergrad, I went to this small liberal arts school in Kentucky called Center College, Bernice Center College alumni and associated people out there. And my undergrad was in music composition and English.
Okay.
Double major.
Very good.
And then I started working in national parks between my junior and senior year. I don't remember how was it? Oh yeah, it was through, do you know Colette Dagelberg? A lot of people know her. She works at Yellowstone. Anyway,
Okay.
her husband had this site called Coolworks, and it was like you could look for seasonal jobs, and the internet, the internet was getting into its own at that time, and I don't remember how, but somehow I was just like, wait, I can get a job in Yellowstone making minimum wage as opposed to going home for the summer making minimum wage. Okay, sign me up. Yeah, so I went out there and got hooked and started doing internships, and eventually after a few years I was like, everyone around me seems to have a degree related to what they're doing. Maybe I should too. And then I got a master's degree in environmental studies from University of Oregon. But I did like cartography and design, so graphic design is kind of what I ended up falling into.
Okay.
I definitely feel like it's very related to the music and literature and all that.
Yeah.
It's just like, how do you create balance? How do you create the right amount of tension? How do you make things exciting? How do you make things fit, and work well? And also communicating. You're communicating something. In the
Right.
case of literature and music, it's a lot more esoteric and
Right.
artistic, I guess you would say. And in this case, we're usually communicating specific information.
Mhm.
But it's very similar. It's
Yeah.
like, how can I arrange these elements to make the clearest and most engaging communication possible?
Right.
So I totally kind of fell into it as well. I went to get that degree and started making maps. Took GIS classes.
Right.
And then someone was like, oh, you're pretty good at this. You should see about this cartography lab, see if they are hiring any students. And so I did, and they weren't hiring me because I already was TAing 16 hours a
Okay.
week, and you could only work 20 hours a week
Gotcha.
if you're a full-time student. But I got an internship working on Atlas of Yellowstone, which is like
Neat.
a 250 page, I think, or somewhere around there, atlas of everything about Yellowstone, like everything. Actually, it'd be great if we had one about Rocky too. And I'd worked at Yellowstone for a couple of years and done a ton of hiking and backpacking, so I knew the park fairly well for 2
Right.
years. And so it all just kind of came together. And then when I was there, a cartography job at Harper's Ferry Center opened up because somebody had retired, and it was the first time they'd hired someone for that job in like 17 years.
Wow.
And I just
So right
I just
place,
happened to
right
get it.
time,
Exactly.
right experience.
Yeah, for me, people ask me about it, like, how do I do that, and what's the path? And I'm like, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's being, just like you're saying, you just kind of, you're like, does this feel right or not?
Yeah.
And then exploring what does feel right and putting yourself into it like all the way.
Right.
And being really passionate about it. But anyway, that's kind of how it happened. Kind of a weird, I think that's, almost everyone.
Right.
Everyone so far that we've talked to, and I would guess almost everyone we talked to, will probably not have too straightforward of a story.
I know.
At least involved in national parks.
And I think that's part of it because we do get asked that question a lot. How
Yeah.
were you so fortunate to work at a national park?
Yeah, we wonder every day.
Yeah, and I think and for those that are also saying I would like to do that same thing. Sometimes it's hard because there isn't
hard to-
necessarily,
yeah.
and that's hard, especially for
is.
those that really want a position with the Park Service. There isn't necessarily if you do this, this, and this, then you will become this or become this, and so
And there's
sometimes
often-
that's tough. But then I think also the breadth of experience also hopefully adds to just life experiences in
think so,
general
too.
for all of us.
Oh yeah,
If we were to
definitely.
look back and say that is not at all the path I think it's pretty rare for
I do
people to
too.
know exactly. I mean, you hear that.
It
You hear
happens,
of
for
people
sure,
saying,
in the parks.
when
It
I was in
happens.
4th grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Or when I was this, I knew that I wanted to
and they
do
follow
this,
through.
and they follow through. But
Yeah,
I think for most people, we're very fluid creatures.
especially in the Park Service, you
Yeah.
kind of have to be. And I don't know. It hasn't come up yet too much on the podcast. Maybe it will at a certain time, but I don't know too if people know the lifestyle things involved
Mhm.
sometimes. Like Lindsay Lewis, we were talking to in an earlier episode, or actually it'll be a later episode. Talking to Lindsay Lewis in a later episode, our volunteer coordinator, and just moving around all the time. And I did the same thing. And the amount of mobility that's almost required and the kind of places you have to live. And if
Right.
it's your thing, then it's great.
Right.
But for a lot of people, it's not their thing.
Right.
It can be really challenging.
Right.
Especially in terms of like relationships
Right.
and family and trying to find a job.
Right.
Or, and all those kinds of issues.
Yeah. Many
So-
times it's romanticized. And depending
Yes.
upon what stage you are in your life, you might be more able to do that. But then there
Yeah.
also becomes other times where you have relationships that you're separated from
Right.
because of it. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
it's not so romantic anymore.
There's so many different arrangements people have to figure. I mean, I know people who for years it's like, oh, I work at this park and my spouse works at this park, and we see each other every now and then on the weekends, or like not even every weekend, or I'm like
Right.
at Grand Canyon. I know multiple people who they have a house in Flagstaff, but they live up in the park during the week. So it's just like, yeah, we see each other on the weekends, and people do what they have to do to make it work. So there's multiple angles to it. Maybe we'll have a lifestyle episode.
There you go.
Yeah, like a home and garden episode of, and just talk about all that stuff, because I think it would be really interesting to people.
Yeah.
We are going to, towards the end of the season, talk to seasonal employees.
Good.
Just about their season
Great.
and beginning, middle, end, wrapping up, and what the experience was like for them.
That's a
and
great idea.
How it's impacted them and that kind of thing. So we'll probably hear more of that stuff.
Yeah.
then. So you've been here 16 years,
Yes.
right, at Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah,
That's
16
a good.
years like this past week.
Oh wow!
I
Happy
know.
anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So
I'm not quite sure how 16 years happened that fast, Miles. How's that possible?
I'm still young. I'm 32, but I'm just starting. I mean, I definitely am perceiving this thing that everyone talks about. That is a cliche, but is so true. Which
Yeah.
is like time goes faster and faster.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
up with that?
Yeah. And
it's like how many years is it? What?
One of my favorites is, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes.
And I think
that is so
I
true.
think that is like the first time I heard that. I'm
That
like,
is so
that
true.
is it in a nutshell
And especially in a
soundbite.
position like yours, I think, because things just, just like a couple weeks ago, we had 5 incidents in a day.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
just, it can seem to go on a really long time, but then afterwards, it's just like, what happened?
Exactly.
What happened to that day?
And we have so many stories and incidents in the park that we don't even have a chance to do news releases
know.
on them too. I
know.
think that sometimes the public is like, oh, you had a string of them and then you haven't had any since.
Right.
Just
No.
for instance, this week we had another day like that, but none of us had a chance to
Right.
put a news release
Exactly.
together. But we had 3 major incidents at Wild Basin on the 4th of July. A
Yeah.
broken hip on
Broken
one
hip.
trail and a broken leg on the other trail. We didn't send out a news release about it. So when people ask me, is there something going on in
Always.
Rocky? I say, I'm sure there is. It's just
Yep.
a matter of whether we know about it yet or
Yep.
not.
It's almost 250,000 acres. It's 4.5 million visitors last year, right?
Yes.
Just over.
Just over, yeah.
So you've been here 16 years. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
You've had lots of experience in one place. How
Mhm.
have things changed from your
Right.
perspective over that 16 years? Because I've been here a little over 2 years and it's changed a
Right,
lot.
right.
So I can't even imagine 16 years. Like how the park and town too,
Right.
because that's another thing people tell me. They're like, "Oh man, you should have been here 20 years ago. You couldn't get a cup of coffee in the winter." So that's obviously changed. But how have things changed over those 16 years?
There's been a lot of changes.
Uh-huh.
And what's refreshing also is that a lot of the stuff stays the same.
Mm.
So I think we had an opportunity to reflect quite a lot in 2015 when the park celebrated its 100th anniversary.
Right.
To really, big anniversaries give you an opportunity to honor the past,
Mhm.
which was part of what we were highlighting, and also, celebrate the present and inspire the future. Those were the three taglines we had. And so when you look at just how much our world has changed in a blink of an eye, really, when it comes to technology, when it comes to global aspects and all that, it is refreshing to really see that the reasons that people come to Rocky Mountain National Park are the same as what they were
Right.
50 years ago, 100 years ago. So to me, that is a wonderful thing.
I agree.
Because I don't know that very many other places, very many organizations, very many entities would really look at that, because I think that most of them would say, as a result of this and technology and this and these
Right.
pressures and et cetera, the people are coming here for the same reasons: scenic grandeur,
Mhm.
watchable wildlife, and amazing recreational opportunities.
Mhm.
So if you were to look back at photos from 75 years ago, it's the same exact thing.
Same.
The photos might look a little different.
Cars
the
look a little
gear,
different.
The cars look a little different. The attire and the
Yeah.
gear looks a little different.
Yep.
But other than that, people were coming here for the same reason. So
Mm-hmm.
and you also wonder too, with just the fast-paced lives that we all live,
Yeah.
the being connected all the time, the pros and cons of that,
Mhm.
that more and more it just continues to emphasize why national parks are so important.
Yeah.
Because we need places
Yeah.
to have respite. We need places to disconnect. We
Mhm.
need places to listen to natural sounds. And you don't know how much you need those places until you're out in them. And
Yeah.
there's like tons and tons of research that highlights that. I mean, that
Absolutely.
demonstrates that even 30 minutes sitting on a rock in nature brings your blood pressure down.
Well,
I mean, that's
it's interesting when I was talking
fascinating.
to those University of Kansas students.
Yeah.
They were all, young. They're all undergrads, and some of them had camped before, but most of them had not camped for like a week.
Yeah.
They stayed at Marine Park Campground
Yeah.
the entire week, so they didn't, no,
That was their
no
experience,
electricity. No,
right.
that was their experience. And even though that's a developed campground and all of that, yeah, just talking to them, interviewing them, people will hear on that podcast episode. Yeah, it just had a huge impact. They're just like, I don't know, just after a few days, I just feel so different. And
Interesting.
I have
That's
different
great.
creative ideas coming to me because unlike indoors where things are kind of under control and the only new things that happen are what you make happen, out here stuff just happens.
Right.
The weather changes, animals move, things, the light, everything
Right.
is always changing. And now I could just tell it was like very impactful and important for them. And I agree with you
Yeah.
totally. It's so easy now to get caught up in your phone and caught
Right.
up in the computer and caught up on TV. And
Right.
it's just like there's a never-ending stream
Right.
that you can be plugged into.
Right.
And so it's nice that our mission has stayed relevant, or like you said, maybe become even more relevant.
Right.
So that stayed the
Exactly.
same,
Yeah.
which is great. We're
Right.
supposed to be here forever. So
Right. Exactly.
yeah, that's the goal.
Well, and I think as different things happened in just the 16 years that I've been here, whether it's had a lot of major incidents that have happened here, it's the things that people said after 9/11 in 2001 that people sought out coming to the park because they
Oh, really?
needed to get
Interesting.
away from the news. They needed to get away from the constant bombardment of what happened
Yeah.
to people on
The
that
news
day.
tickers
And so
Huh.
it was interesting right after that people, flocked here because it was like, the mountains are calling for me just to remove myself from what's going on and find peace
I
somewhere.
hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
it
a little bit before I was in the Park Service. So it was
Yeah.
noticeable.
Oh, it was very noticeable. Very
That's amazing.
noticeable.
So it was
Yeah.
like a place where people could come
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and have some space
Yeah.
to like heal.
Exactly.
Huh.
And
Wow, that's amazing.
and there's a number of stories out there, very moving stories that people have shared about coming here right after that time period that,
Huh.
brings tears to your eyes because it was a conscious decision that they said, I need to get away from what is happening right now.
Mhm.
And so where can I go? And they came here.
Mhm.
And so to me, that just emphasizes again why we need to
Absolutely.
preserve and protect this place.
Absolutely.
Because there's been a lot that's happened in our world the last 100 years since Rocky's been here.
Yep.
And so you can imagine that people came here after World War II. People
Sure.
came here for so many different reasons to find, peace and tranquility.
Huge growth in
and-
parks after World War II.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. So, the mission has stayed
Yeah.
the same.
Right.
What has not stayed the same
Uh-huh.
is our level of visitation.
Yeah.
And
Just
so
the sheer number of
the
people.
sheer number of people. And Rocky has always been one of the most popular parks.
Sure.
But what's happening in the last 5 years is we're seeing this rapid increase in visitation, 40% over the last 4 years, 32% over the last 2 years. So we now in 2016 were 4.5 million visitors. In 2015, we became the third most visited park. And then in 2016, Yosemite leaped over us again, and we were the fourth
We were close.
most visited
We're-
national
yeah.
park. Yeah. And so there's lots of reasons for that. Most of it has to do with population growth along the Front Range.
Yep. It's booming.
It's booming, and
tell
some of
every
the
time you go down there.
fastest growing counties are literally either in our doorstep or on our doorstep. And so when a lot of people are moving to Colorado because they want to recreate in
Sure.
places like this. It's what calls to them. And so we're handy, head straight up. And
Yep.
so that's a wonderful problem to have. And
Yeah,
I
it
use
is.
air quotes with problem because a lot of folks might say, well, hey, that's better than apathy. That's better than
Yeah.
people not
Totally.
enjoying. And hopefully those people will become or are already supporters, stewards,
Mhm.
protectors, and help us preserve this place as well.
And a shared experience.
And a shared
too, which I think is
experience.
cool. People
Absolutely.
all over Colorado can oh, you've been to Rocky? I haven't.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a communal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So in that case, yeah.
So, but and our visitation continues to spike dramatically.
Yeah.
And if you look over, you look in the past as far as our visitation levels over the years, it seems to, there's patterns of it increasing and then plateauing and then increasing and plateauing. So that's been part of our past. We're now at a point again where we are significantly increasing. When and if that's going to plateau, I don't know that we can continue to deal with the level of visitation increases that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I don't think that we can continue to see 32%, 32. I just don't know that that's possible because of just the infrastructure.
It's physically possible.
Physically possible for that many people to arrive in the park and all that. So I don't know that we're going to continue to see that dramatic growth just because of logistics.
Yeah, just limitations.
Yeah, limitations. Even before we take any actions, just limitations in general. But certainly, as we look into the future and we look at just this dramatic increase over the last couple of years, record visitation every year, the last 4 years, record visitation every month of the year. So maybe our old model was Memorial Day through late September.
Yeah.
We now know that model is completely out the window.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing record visitation every month of the year. And it's not just Rocky. Public lands in general in Colorado are seeing, huge increase in visitation and then some of the impacts related to that.
Yeah.
So certainly that's been a significant change over the last 4 years and this rapid growth that you just can't keep up with. So in 2015, we were completely on our heels. That year, we had a 21% increase in 1 year. And although visitation continues to go up, our staffing does not.
Yep.
And so after a while...
And that's something that surprises people. Almost everyone I tell that, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we have either equal or even less staff than we've had in the past with way fewer visitors.
Exactly. We have less staff now.
Yes, despite having way more visitors.
Yeah.
Like
so
millions more.
Yeah, we have less staff now than we had 8 years ago.
Yep.
And so, that's something that we as a leadership team need to continue to address because our colleagues' well-being is extremely important. And we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And so as we continue to, deal with some of the challenges and steps we're taking now, we're looking at 4 areas. That visitor and staff safety is extremely important to us. Resource protection.
So that resource, when we say resource in Park Service, we mean like the park at every level.
Absolutely.
So the physical part, the view sheds, the quality of the night skies, the quality of the soundscape, the cultural and historical landscape. That's all. When we say resource, we mean all of that.
Right.
Okay. So resource protection.
And then just, wildlife habitat, everything is kind of surrounded into that.
Yes. Everything involved.
And then visitor experience.
Yep.
So what kind of experience are visitors having with this level of visitation? And then operational capacity. Like truly what can our infrastructure take? Whether it's restroom facilities in Bear Lake, whether it's our trail system, whether it's our roads, all of our infrastructure. What can our infrastructure, operational capacity take with this level of visitation?
Right.
And so those are the kind of 4 overarching areas that we started moving forward in 2016, looking at all of those things and taking some short-term steps, and then also, realizing and knowing that we're also starting the long-range planning efforts as well.
Yeah.
And it's going to take all of us to come up with the solutions and also potentially make hard decisions. And again, when you think about the mission of the Park Service, that dual mandate, very, very difficult balancing act.
Yeah,
the whole preserving and protecting for future generations, and then providing for recreational opportunities now. I mean, in a nutshell, it's a little bit more involved than that.
Yeah, but that's basically
truly
it.
what the balancing act is.
For listeners, if you look up the enabling legislation for the Park Service, you'll see, that it's protecting, basically,
right,
but also providing for the enjoyment of. And sometimes, as you can imagine, those things can come into direct conflict because, for example, let's say that it's enjoyable for people to have 10,000 people around Moraine Park in like stadium seating watching elk. But that is not the best thing for elk.
Right.
And maybe not the best thing for those people. Maybe that's not protecting their experience in a certain way. So that's just one example. But it's just the constant
It is.
I don't know if I want to say conflict, but paradox or
Right.
or dual goals that we're
Yes.
always working under.
Exactly. Sometimes it's more of a dilemma than others.
Yeah, and I felt like it's hard, not just here, but with other parks that are experiencing really high visitation.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's not necessarily the hard number that matters as much. It's like the capacity.
Right.
You know, what capacity are we at in terms of restrooms, in
Right.
terms of parking spaces, in terms
Right.
of, and yeah, I feel like, there's other parks, Zion,
Right.
Yosemite, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Smokies, and there's a lot more than that, and us. And it, to me, is difficult. It's almost like an identity crisis, because for years, I feel like with parks, it was, we need to get more people out to the parks because we want more people to see how amazing they are and to have that experience and enjoy their public lands and their heritage. And even to the point where I remember, like at Black Canyon, the Gunnison, for example, when I worked there, it's very quiet in
Right.
the winter, which is great if you live up there and you like it to be quiet. But on the other hand, we're always kind of like, oh, why don't more people come up here and realize how amazing it is? Well, now at Rocky, they are. People are coming in the winter.
Right.
Winter weekends, parking will get full. Like, it happens a lot.
It does.
And they're coming in the fall, and they're coming in the spring. They're coming in these less or more challenging weather times,
Right.
but that also have their own beauty, which is great. It's just also like, oh my gosh.
Well, and we hear from
What do we do?
visitors that say that they're not coming anymore, too.
Yeah,
Because
and that always
of
makes me
the
sad.
level of visitation. So
Yeah.
that's another thing we need to be looking at, is also making sure that not only are we providing an experience for visitors now, and that's a hard thing to hang your hat on, because what you think is a valuable experience and what I think is a valuable experience might be very, very different.
Absolutely.
And we see that all the time with our visitors. What some person considers as crowding, if they're from, a rural setting, or their mindset is this
Mhm.
is going to be their experience, and if somebody comes maybe from an urban situation and they feel more comfortable when there's
Right.
lots of people around.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say, what's the visitor experience? Well, it's so individual.
It is.
But I think we also have to acknowledge that we continue to hear from people that are, I'm not coming back, or I just came there and I hadn't been there in 5 years, and it was, a very
crazy.
different situation, crazy. I did not enjoy it. I think those are all conversations we need to have, so that we have to remember that we are a national park. So we have to take all of those voices and feedback in mind as we continue to think through how we move forward. And it's not just about all of us.
No.
It's about those that are coming here 30 years from now, about our
Exactly.
grandkids and nieces and nephews, and all of these generations that, those that came before us.
Yeah.
We would have been pretty ticked off at them if they wouldn't have taken
Absolutely.
care of this place. And so we also need to take ownership as a country, as a community, as a however you want to say it. We also have to take that ownership to say, how are we leaving this for folks that are going to come 30 years from now? And the decisions that we make now
Yeah.
are going to make
Right.
a significant difference in
Right.
that. And so that's
So,
a big part of what
yeah.
we're needing to address.
So on our end, on the park end, we have all sorts of stuff going on right now to
We do.
look at, just trying to get baselines, basically,
Right.
of what visitation is, what are the patterns, what do people want out of their experience, what are they looking for, kind of collecting data, correct?
Right.
And then we're using that data to begin well-informed, to basically inform our discussion internally and then with the public, to just say, this is what's happening. These
Right.
are the facts on the ground. These are the pros and cons, and what do we want to try to do in the future to figure it out. And
Right.
for me, I think it's a little scary because we don't know the answer, but it's also exciting because we don't
Right.
know the answer. And we're
Right.
trying to figure it out with people.
Right.
And I think, one thing with this podcast that I want people to be able to experience, having these conversations that are just very straightforward and very non-formal and very, like this, is that we are not trying to make rules to like kill anyone's fun. Like everyone I talk to in the park, we got into parks because we love parks,
Right.
and we love visiting parks, and we love we love it so much we wanted to live in a
Right.
park.
Right.
And so we totally get that, and we want people to have the best vacation or whatever,
Right.
personal growth experience or whatever
Right.
their experience is. So, but the reason we do have regulations is because that protects side.
Right.
You know, we're trying to protect it, like you said, for future generations forever.
Right.
So what are some of the key things with this growing visitation that we are asking visitors to be aware of and
Okay.
to do that can help us?
Right.
Help us help them. Help me help you.
Exactly. So there are a variety of things, and one is just continuing to do things like this, where we engage and connect with visitors to help us come up with some of the solutions
To hear their voice.
to hear their voice and informing each other as well. So we took short-term action the last couple of years because we had to. You know, as I mentioned, we were completely on our heels in 2015. Saw the ramifications of that, not only on the resource, but on visitors and staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of just the crowding. So we started putting restrictions in place along the Bear Lake Road Corridor, Wild Basin, and Alpine Visitor Center, which are our three main congested areas, starting in 2016. And there was not some magical time on the clock on Saturday that we said, okay, every Saturday at 10:18, it's meant to be very fluid, and we're moving forward with
And it's
those restrictions
safety-based, right?
this year.
I think people need to understand that it's safety-based.
Right. It's
It's
safety-based.
like, for example, I mean, if there's just miles of cars in every direction and something happens,
Right.
let's say it was someone you're hiking with,
Yeah.
and we need to get an ambulance up there.
Right.
We can't get an ambulance up there
Right.
because it's so crowded. And
Right.
so that was part of it, right?
That's
we
it.
just were saying this
Right.
is becoming unsafe.
Right. There are lots of parts of it. So that is one of the main reasons. And
Yeah.
we had examples in past years where we literally could not get emergency vehicles down in areas or to areas because of the sheer congestion along the roads
Right.
and the way people had parked that we could not get, and it absolutely impacted our response time.
Yep.
And so that's a big part of why we made these decisions. And places like Wild Basin Road, which is a dirt, narrow road
Yeah.
that leads down to the Wild Basin Trailhead.
Yep. Got to
All
use
it
pullouts
takes
to pass people a lot of the time.
all it takes is, a couple of people parking because they can't find a legitimate parking space, so they park somewhere, and now the back of their vehicle is out in the middle of the road, and they leave their vehicle, head in to go hike, and then, just trying to get around and maneuver around those vehicles, again, in emergency vehicles.
Or just other visitors.
visitors.
It's a consideration for everyone else.
Yeah, and if we had to evacuate an area because of fires, that's also, a
Interesting.
concern as well, because you have all of these people that are kind of down a narrow dirt road. So these are all things we have to keep in mind. And then just the resources. So once parking areas filled up, once legitimate parking spots filled up, we were seeing that, unfortunately, visitors were parking on the resource in places that you would not have thought was even possible.
Right.
And so we were seeing significant resource damage and impacts as a
like the
result of
vegetation
that.
and things
Vegetation,
like that.
yeah.
Where
And,
just the sides of the road start looking like baseball fields or something,
Right,
they're
right.
just dirt.
Exactly. So then there goes the whole aspect that we are required to provide as far as resource protection, that native vegetation, other aspects of just what happens to wildlife when you have that many people in an area. So again, we took steps with that in mind, and then just truly what our facilities could stand. So when there's that many people in that area, even if we had a custodian cleaning the bathroom every 30 minutes, the condition of our facilities were very, very poor just because of the volume of people that were there.
Yep.
So for all of these reasons and many more, we started restricting vehicle access. So when parking areas fill and the congestion warrants along the roads starting to become an unsafe situation, then we start putting restrictions in place. Last summer, that was June through September, every weekend is when it usually happened. And the same thing has been happening this year as well, and it's actually moved into some weekdays.
Really?
As well,
Wow.
just because of our level of visitation.
Yeah.
Same,
because we've been setting some new records, right?
Same challenges of Alpine Visitor Center.
Yeah.
So, we got two roads that now, with Old Fall River
Right,
Road
Old Fall
open
River
for
Road
the
empties
season.
into the
So you
Alpine
got
Visitor Center
two
parking lot.
roads that empty, and all it takes is a couple people wanting to turn into that visitor center from Trail Ridge Road. and you soon have backups for miles
yeah.
as a result of that. So those are all things that we're trying to tackle best we can, but you have to kind of intensively manage those areas too. And in 2016, we actually had less complaints because we took those steps in. In fact, we had a lot of people that reached out to us and said, finally,
really,
if you plan ahead, you can get into these areas.
So it helped.
So it helped. And I think also we saw a lot of belligerence amongst visitors. And so that, with putting those restrictions in place, that helped ease some of that belligerence.
Just helps keep you out of
crowding.
A situation that you can't win.
Right.
Like if you're driving around looking for parking and it isn't there, you're just going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
And
right.
I can understand that for sure.
So a lot of it is helping us better inform the visitor. So a lot of that too is, again, really trying to convey the plan ahead message. So many of our visitors are return visitors. They come here year after year, or maybe they haven't been here for 5 years. Their experience is very different than the way they remember it 5 years ago. We also have a lot of visitors that are coming up here for the first time. They jump in their car on a Saturday at noon, and then their world is rocked when they get up here and realize that our entrance station lines are long and there's no parking. So a lot of what we've been trying to do for the last 3 years is really doing as much as we can to encourage people to plan ahead. We realize that there's going to be visitors that don't do any planning ahead, and they're extremely spontaneous, and I envy that. I wish I was that spontaneous. But really, other parks, I believe, other parks have put in their catch lines, do not be spontaneous when coming to a national park, particularly May through October.
Yep, not a busy one, yep.
Yeah. And so I think that's a lot of, if people do truly plan ahead, look at some of the tips that we have on our website and
got it on the homepage.
On the homepage, it really, really does make a difference. And we realize that people are listening, so we always did that hike early. Well, no surprise, we knew this was going to happen, that people are now coming here earlier, and so that means our parking lots are going to fill up earlier. So I know that some parks say come prior to 7 or after 6 p.m. That might be part of our future here
because we
at
have
Rocky.
Been saying 10 to 3, right? But it's shifting.
It is, but we say, that 10 to 3 is that crunch time. So the earlier people come or the later people come outside of that 10 to 3, they'll have more success and they'll have a more pleasant experience. And we continue to see this huge influx on weekends. So if people could even just tweak their schedule and come on a weekday, even in July,
in
weekday, it helps a little bit. But weekends,
in the fall, it's huge. I mean,
huge.
I get that it's hard for people in the fall because kids are in school and blah, blah, and all of that. But the fall here.
Right. We have about 50% higher visitation on weekends in the fall than we do weekdays. And that's changing a little bit too. But it's some of our busiest days for the year are weekends in the fall because it's a glorious time to be here.
So before 10, depending on your trailhead, maybe
even earlier than
8,
that.
7, almost 6 for some trailheads.
Exactly.
And then after 3.
Right.
And I definitely see that to be true because I'll come in after work sometimes and it's a lot less busy.
So those are
weekdays, over weekends if you can.
Right.
Okay.
And then, again, just the whole concept of carpooling, using the shuttle system. And
our shuttle system is great.
It is great. And our shuttle system's been around since the 70s. Our shuttle system, got improved in the early 2000s. We started our shuttle system, worked closely with the town of Estes Park. They were able to, take advantage of the shuttles being in this area to also then expand the shuttle program within the town of Estes Park. And then we have the hiker shuttle that's a park shuttle that runs from the Estes Park Visitor Center up to Bear Lake. Which has a new parking garage. And there's a new parking garage there.
So more spaces there.
And the shuttles run every 30 minutes. So again, people need to set the expectation that those buses only run every 30 minutes. So there is a very good possibility, again, if they're here on a busy weekend, that they might stand in line for that hiker shuttle for more than an hour before they can ride into the park.
Which can be a little. It can feel frustrating, but the other thing that I kind of like about it sometimes, number one, you get to meet people and talk to people, which is kind of fun. Number two, if you weren't doing that, you would be sitting in your car trying to negotiate traffic that hour. And then when you do get to go into the park, you can just enjoy the view and not worry about finding a place to park.
Right.
So
Exactly. And
yeah.
there are some advantages. And we also try to highlight at the hiker shuttle if they are coming between that 10 and 3 period, and our restrictions are in place. And so that's the only way they can get up Bear Lake if they're really focused on going to Bear Lake is, go walk around Lake Estes, go into town and have lunch, come back and get on the hiker shuttle, say at 3 or later. Then they won't have as long of a wait time.
Yep.
And so again, it's setting realistic expectations, just like anywhere else we go.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we're going to, anytime we travel, if we can set realistic expectations for people. I know that when I travel, I want people to be straight with me and say, this is how long this is going to take.
Yep.
This is rather than, everything is just fine.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big thing of lightning that came down over Prospect Mountain.
Pretty close. All right.
So, I don't know if we want to. We could finish it in the car.
Yeah, we could wrap up in the car, so we don't get electrocuted, lightninged, fried. I'll pick this little baby up.
There you go. I got this.
Right. So we've got the shuttle bus system. Definitely take advantage of it. Sometimes it is your only option, but even when it's not, I often will use it just because I find it less stressful.
Right. Right. And, something that we often get asked is that we've been asked either just have it be bus access only into Bear Lake Road Corridor. We've also been asked oftentimes, why not more buses? Why don't you run buses every 5-10 minutes? And buses are certainly a great tool to move people. But as soon as you start using buses, then your capacity changes greatly. So the trailheads and the parking areas were the former capacity to these areas. But if you continue to increase shuttle access to areas, then you just surge, oftentimes, users into the area. And we've learned from our colleagues in other national parks like Zion that buses, also provide challenges. Where even with the frequency of buses that they're running, they still have pretty significant wait times as a result of it. So shuttles are a great tool to use, but they're not the only tool that we can use here at Rocky. And they also, cost money. So funds that we would be using towards shuttle buses is very limited as far as our entrance fees. And so it would certainly be part of the overall plan to see what funding would be available. And that would be a side note as far as just looking at the capacity and what resource impacts you would have if you continued to just surge people.
Right.
And then what's the visitor experience? If you happen to be at a trailhead or getting off a bus with 40 other people, is that the experience that you're looking for when you're hiking into the park?
Yeah.
So these are all things that we have to look at when we look at how we're going to use shuttle buses as a tool.
Right. So before 10, after 3, use shuttle buses as a tool. Any other things that tips we can give people to help have the best visit possible?
The whole concept of hike early, hike late is really key. And if people do decide to hike late, they really need to be dialed into the weather forecast.
Yep.
That will make a big difference.
Yep.
And truly just what time they will be coming out. Is it going to be dark?
Yeah.
If it is, then they need to make sure that they are prepared for that. Whether it's being really dialed into the route and not going off trail, which we don't encourage anyway.
Yeah.
And then also just making sure, you have headlamps and things like that as you're coming out. So you have to look at your hike very differently if you are going in later in the day.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And definitely check the weather forecast.
Right.
It's our typical pattern here to have afternoon thunderstorms every afternoon. We're not always in that pattern, but a lot of times we are. We just ducked inside because of that very pattern, because lightning started. So, yeah, that's definitely one thing to think about, because especially a lot of our hikes go above tree line. You don't want to be above tree line if there is lightning anywhere around. So watch that really carefully. But as long as you do watch the forecast, hiking in the evening is great a lot of the time, especially when this light's long in the summer. Okay, so that's a good tip. Hike early, hike late.
And then the other thing, again, as you're planning ahead and thinking about your destination, is that 80% of our visitors come in through the east side of the park, 20% from the west side.
80%, wow.
Yeah, so and which would make sense when you think
Sure,
about
populations.
the populations and Denver International Airport and elsewhere. but certainly if people want to just know that fact when it comes to planning, they might choose, what entrance they come in based on where they're coming from or their interest in what they're looking at. So that's just
we have the whole west side of the park.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think the other is camping, which we know, but
this one
if
surprises
people want
people,
to
I
camp
think.
in the park, we've got 3 reservation campgrounds, 2 first come, first serve, and those 3 reservation campgrounds are booked 6 months in advance.
Yep. So that's
part of
Aspen Glen,
Marine
Glacier Basin,
Park,
and Moraine Park, right?
Yep, exactly. So
Booked
people
6
just
months in advance.
Yeah. So if people want to camp, they really need to book those reservations, and it's good. Then you have a place.
Right. And you can do that online.
You can do that
go
online. So
and
mark your calendar, and it's 6 months
you can pick your
prior
exact
to,
spot, see it on a map, get all, plan way ahead.
And that's pretty typical, not only for Rocky, but most other public lands and federal lands in this area.
Especially in this area.
Yeah. And first come, first serve, certainly if people want to roll the dice and hope that they can get one of those first come, first serves, Timber Creek Campground on the west side is the campground that fills up last. So that's just some other tidbits. And we already talked about the significant difference between weekend versus weekday visitation. And then the last thing too is people can purchase their pass online. So if they're wanting to take the hiker shuttle, an entrance pass is required for that. People can purchase that online. If they're coming into the park, they can purchase the pass online. It doesn't speed up your time in the actual line. So some people are like, well, if I do this online, do I have to be in the entrance station lines? Yes,
For
you
now,
do.
you do. Yep.
You do. But the big thing to remember is just that it should shorten your transaction time.
Yes,
so
most definitely.
Rather than handing the person in the one of our colleagues in the booth your credit card, going through that whole thing, you just basically can show on your smartphone that you've purchased the pass.
And then they'll say, here's your brochure, here's your newspaper.
So it does speed up the transaction time at the booth. So that would make a difference. The more and more people that use that, then the quicker the lines will
And for people
go.
who want to do that, if you go to our webpage, just search Rocky Mountain National Park. It'll come up. It's on the front page, fees and passes, and you can go right there. It'll take you straight to a form. You can fill it all online.
Yes.
Works well.
Yes, works very well. So that's just another tool
Great.
that people can use.
Awesome. Anything else that we should cover?
I think
because I have one final question, and then we'll be done.
Very good. I think the other thing that we could spend a lot more time on, that maybe we can talk about at a future time, but the plea to continue to ask visitors to help us protect this resource.
Yes.
And we have seen, this increase in visitation, and I think a big part of what we talk about is that most of our visitors are here for all the right reasons. They love this place. They want to protect this place. They have this amazing sense of place when they come here that they want to protect it. We are seeing, though, more and more behavior that we're really concerned about, that we're seeing increase. Now, it's probably the same percentage of visitors, but now when you're at 4.5 million, that same percentage of visitors is going to have more impact.
What kind of behavior?
So we're seeing, a number of behaviors that either are tied to people not knowing or not caring. And so what we'll all just have to continue to work on as best we can is the behavior that people just don't know about. It's the first time that they've been to a national park.
Yep, all sorts of new stuff.
All sorts of new stuff, continuing to highlight that these are special places. We want to keep them special places. National parks are not meant to be all things for all people. They're not multi-use places like some of our colleagues in other areas.
We have a lot of that land in the United States.
We do.
That's just not what national parks.
Right. So U.S.
That's not why we were
Forests,
created.
U.S. Forest Service. They have amazing places where they are multi-use, where
BLM
people
too.
can do a variety of more activities than they can in national parks. So we do have those places.
And we have a lot of Forest Service land in Colorado.
We do.
Like 13 million acres, something like that. It's unbelievable.
We have a lot. And so I think, continuing to highlight that national parks are special places. And some of the behavior that we've seen increase, we talked a little bit about before, as far as just parking challenges, that when we have crowding and when people don't have parking spaces, we continue to see people be extremely creative with where they're parking in the park, whether it's on, native vegetation, whether it's on the tundra, whether it's blocking other cars in, whether it's, in ditches and near streams and rivers. And so that's a concern for us. And, again, really trying to highlight that, even though somebody might consider this, well, it's just grass, it's not just grass. It's native vegetation. All it takes is one car. And, we're in a very unique habitat that stuff doesn't grow here that quickly.
No.
And so ripping it out with tires, et cetera, or putting hot cars on top of grass also can present a whole nother set of challenges when it comes to, like catching on fire.
In the summer.
Yes.
Yep. I've definitely heard of fires started that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And so parking in established, developed parking areas, we need to continue to just get as much help as we can from the public on that. Speaking of fires, we're seeing in the last couple of years extreme concern for park staff, and that we've seen a huge increase in the amount of illegal campfires in Rocky Mountain National Park. And so that not only concerns us, but it obviously concerns our communities that surround us. If a fire was to escape from an illegal campfire, which has happened in Rocky Mountain National Park, it will drastically change all of our lives in a matter of 30 seconds.
Yep.
It happened in 2012 with the Fern Lake fire. That fire started with an illegal campfire in the Forest Canyon area in October. Extremely dry time for us. November was the driest November on record. And that fire cost over $6 million to fight, and a big part of Estes Park was evacuated from that, and again from an illegal campfire. So that's
So when you're in Rocky, if you are not in a campground or picnic area with an established fire ring, you're not allowed to have a fire.
Right. We
It's
always have restrictions in place in Rocky for fires,
and we understand for sure that a lot of people, when they're camping or whatever, they like to have a fire, and that is totally fine. And there's lots of places you can do that. Rocky's just not one of them.
Exactly.
So if that's really important for your backpacking trip or whatever, find areas where that is managed and allowed for.
Right.
Here it is not.
We've had
protect other people and protect yourself and protect the park.
We've had people illegally starting fires on the tundra, right by trailheads, and talk about a fragile ecosystem that does not recover.
Yeah, we talked about that with Cynthia.
Great.
Yes.
So certainly that's a big thing, and a lot of that group is those that don't care. So that's another way to address that is continuing to do patrols, and we're really fortunate, Rocky, because we've got so many sets of eyes and ears out there.
Yes, and visitors,
a pro to our level of visitation, and boy, do we hear as soon as people start smelling smoke, seeing smoke. They'll take pictures of it. They'll take pictures of people that are in the area. It's amazing the things that people do to help us try to prevent that. So
and another thing we can plug, another thing people can do that will lay this out specifically for you is the Rocky Pledge, which we've worked on together. It's on our website. If you go to the homepage, you'll find it, or if you go to go.nps.gov/Rocky Pledge, and it has a couple 6 bullet points, I believe, items of like the main things you can do to help us protect the park. And you can go there, look at the pledge, read through it. You can say it out loud with the group, say it to yourself, snap a photo in the park of you pledging, and share it with your friends and family. Because we're trying to get the message out there, and in a positive way, that this is your national park. It's all of our national parks, and so we're just to take care of it, to take pride in it, just like you take pride in your own home or your own community is maybe a better metaphor. Yeah.
Right. Somebody once said, which I love, is like, act like you own this place. And really, that's truly what we need. We need everybody's help with. We talked about some of our challenges with staffing before, and so we can't be everywhere. We'd love to be, but we can't. And so it really takes all of us to continue to say, how can I get involved by doing the Rocky Pledge, or educating and informing this group that I'm talking to, or my friends that are coming over for dinner, or how can I engage with other visitors if I'm in the park in a professional, kind way to highlight some of the let's all do this together.
Yeah. Because really, like you said, a lot of people, they literally don't know.
Right. The other thing we're seeing is a big challenge is the increase of dogs on trails, and it's a huge concern to us, and it's probably the number one complaint we get from other visitors is the number of dogs that are on trails. And so again, we have signs everywhere. So usually it's people that don't care with dogs. Rarely is it oh, I didn't know.
Right.
Because you're literally walking right past a sign.
Like every trailhead.
And then we have visitors that say, I told these people no dogs on the trail, and they're like, yeah, I know.
Right.
But I take my dog everywhere I go.
Right.
So it's something that is something that we're going to continue to tackle, and we just ask that visitors just leave their dogs at home. There's lots of other places you can take your dog. You can take your dog on trails in forest areas and in our surrounding communities. You know, dogs are predators. Wildlife act differently when dogs are in an area.
And I think what something people have to remember, and I'm a dog owner, so I have to remind myself of this too, is like there's last year 4.5 million people
right
here. So even if maybe you're in the middle of national forest by yourself, you know, there's hardly anyone around and a few pets, and it's not a big deal. But you can imagine here, if even 10% of people brought a pet, how with the wildlife and other visitors, you know, a lot of people are uncomfortable around dogs, and there's just so many people in one spot that, it poses lots of issues.
Yeah, dogs can be, you know, again, predators. They impact wildlife behavior. They can also be prey. We've had situations here in the park where small dogs have been preyed on by coyotes, bobcats, raptors. And so we have mountain lions.
You probably won't hear about that if your dog is
right. So certainly that, and then also just honoring that other visitors should have an opportunity to recreate in a place where there's not dogs on the trails. We've had people bit by dogs on the trails, and so again, you know, continuing to try to step back from being a beloved pet owner, which we all understand,
for sure,
and realizing that there are just some places that pets should not go. And Rocky Mountain National Park trail system is one of those, and the tundra and many other places. So the only place you can have dogs in Rocky Mountain National Park are places where you can have cars.
Yep. So like picnic areas, campgrounds, right on the roadside. If you're like by your car,
right,
and that's
exactly. Yep, that's pretty much it. And they
with
always
the
have to be
exception of
leashed.
service animals, but we use if you have a service animal, you will know it. So emotional support, therapy, all that does not count. It has to be performing a task, a specific task for someone with a disability, and we have that language on our website. So if you do have a service animal and you know that you fall into that category, that's a different story. But that is most people that's not what it is.
Right. And then a couple of other things is just we're continuing to see social trails increase significantly. So we just continue to ask people to stay on established trails.
So social trail, for folks who don't know, is basically when, you know, someone walks up a way and then someone sees their footsteps and follows, and then before you know it, you get a trail worn in. And I think people may not realize how much work goes into building a good trail and what's involved, but it is very specific in terms of dealing with erosion from footsteps, from rain, from wind, all of that. We try to build trails to minimize the amount of erosion. Social trails don't follow any of that, and so they can really end up being harmful.
Right.
Yes.
Significant resource impacts
so
from social
on
trails.
established.
We're seeing significant impacts on the tundra from social trails, other places. It is. So, and then just a couple of other things, because we could probably spend a lot of time on each one of these, but the whole concept of leave no trace is really critical, whether it's orange peels or apple cores or, you know, anything. It impacts other people. If you walk along and you see that kind of stuff, then you have left a trace. People say, I know that somebody else has been here, and not removing things, not removing rocks or flowers or pine cones. If 4.5 million visitors all took something with them when they left, it does impact other people's experience.
Absolutely.
So we need to think through that. And then the last one that we need to do a podcast on, Miles, is the whole concept of human waste in our backcountry.
Yes.
It's a growing concern for us. The amount of human waste that's on our trails, next to our trails, the amount of toilet paper that's being left behind, the amount of poop that's being left behind right on our trails. The health and safety aspects of that is something that we're seeing explode as well. And it's not just here at Rocky that's becoming a major problem. It's places all over the place. And so that truly, I think we need to do another podcast on the whole concept of, you know, how leaving no trace when it comes to going to the bathroom really makes a difference. And again, the challenges that we have with facilities further in our trail system and our backcountry, We just really need to continue to engage the public in
Yeah.
packing it out with you, which is
Yep.
a hard thing for some people to wrap their brains around.
It's not glamorous, but actually, yeah, I'm gonna be a little over a week. We're going out with Tara, Vasella, and a wilderness crew, and I'm gonna be asking them about that. 'Cause
Great.
There's the folks who have to deal with all that business.
Right, right.
And I
It's
think
the stuff we don't want to talk about or think about, but
it's super important.
it's super important.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be hiking down this beautiful trail and then just see human
Right.
poop all over the place.
Right.
And I think, just like you said, getting that message out there that part of what makes coming to a national park exciting is that there's different expectations and there's a different requirement for personal responsibility in terms of thinking about your own impact. And that's part of what's neat about it is it makes it very clear to you, much more so.
Right.
But there are steps that you need to take. So
Right.
yeah, we'll see how that gets covered in the next one, and then maybe we could do. I think it'd be neat to do a podcast with some janitorial staff, just to let people know how many of those folks work here at the park and how important, like absolutely essential, their job is.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah, great. Okay, so one final question.
Okay.
I've been asking everybody. It's a hard question to answer, but that's okay. You've been here 16 years. What does Rocky Mountain National Park mean to you?
Rocky Mountain National Park epitomizes to me what the mountains are all about. I mean, if you were anywhere in this world and you closed your eyes and said, what are mountains all about? What is that habitat all about? And people love the mountains. It's what calls a lot of people, or people are scared when they think about mountains. But you think about all of the things that we have, wildflowers, the diversity of wildlife we have, the mountain streams and rivers that truly are the headwaters to life all the way down that path. And so to me, Rocky Mountain National Park is all of those things. And that's another reason why people should get out and experience it responsibly. They should also preserve and protect it because it's such a unique, diverse landscape. And oftentimes people think, oh, is the tundra barren because it's up high and because there's not a lot of tall things growing? It's like, it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's so
It
full
is
of life.
absolutely full of life. And no matter where you are in this park, there's this unbelievable diversity, whether you're at a montane riparian area or whether you go up to the alpine where you're above the trees. And so to me, I think of Rocky as being this really diverse place that sometimes doesn't get very much credit for being this diverse place because people think of, oh, it's the mountaintops. Well, it's all of the life that's throughout all of those different systems at so many different levels.
Range of altitude really does mean that we have lots of distinct ecosystems, and it's neat once you learn about it or you're here and you pay attention, you start to see that and appreciate that.
And the other aspect of Rocky, that what Rocky means to me is a lot of the people that I get this unbelievable opportunity to work with, and the diversity, not only what the resource provides, but the diversity of what our colleagues do. It blows my mind every day. Like I said, the thing that I regret the most is not being able to tell everybody's story, because the things that our folks do is part of what just moves me about this place. Not only the resource, but our colleagues too.
Great. Came up with an answer so quickly. It's impressive. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Kyle.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I bet we'll check back in with you about different things as this progresses and grows to the greatest podcast on earth.
Very good. Thank you for your efforts in making this happen.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. And that's our show. Thank you so much for listening this week. Our next episode will be released, as always, in 2 weeks. That will be Friday, August 11th. For show notes, transcriptions, and to learn more about our show, visit our homepage at go.nps.gov/rmnpod. That is go.nps.gov/rmnpod. The Rocky Mountain National Podcast is a product of Rocky Mountain National Park, one of 417 units of the National Park Service that preserve America's heritage for all, forever. Thank you. We hope your next 2 weeks are awesome, and we will see you next time.
One of the truly significant features of Glacier National Park is the incredible biological diversity found here. In Glacier National Park, more plant species are found than either the cluster of Rocky Mountain National Parks to the north, around Banff and Jasper, or in the Yellowstone ecosystem to the south. At Two Dog Flats, where the prairies meet the mountains, two of those major communities overlap, creating an edge effect where many species of wildlife find important food and shelter. Often where the edge of one habitat type overlaps the edge of another, there is an increase in the number and diversity of species present, resulting in associations and combinations of animal communities not generally found together. Here at the Two Dog Flats area, shortgrass prairie species from the east mingle with dry East Slope Rocky Mountain forests, creating a rich environment. It's not uncommon to see coyotes and badgers hunting ground squirrels in the meadows while hawks soar overhead seeking voles and mice. Deer hidden in the forest during the day frequent the meadows in the morning and evening hours. Songbirds from the prairies and the forests alike can be heard singing their mating calls and territorial warnings. Predators find a rich source of food in areas like Two Dog Flats because of the abundance of food for prey species to take advantage of. These meadows are also important winter range for elk. Throughout the winter, a small band of several hundred elk can be found grazing in the flats and on the meadows down near St. Mary. These areas are usually blown free of snow by the near-constant winds in the St. Mary Valley, making it an easier wintering ground for them. In the spring, however, the elk move to higher ground and generally spend the summer in the mountains, seen towering in the background. If you're here in the spring or in the fall, expect to see elk in the evenings and the mornings. Two Dog Flats is beautiful any season of the year. Winter is stark and harsh, and few visitors see the park during this quiet time of the year. But in the summer, a profusion of wildflowers carpets the meadows and offer a treat for both botanists and wildlife enthusiasts. Spend a while at Two Dog Flats, and you will see that this meadow is alive with activity.
Yellowstone is famous for huge explosive volcanic eruptions. There's really nothing brewing right now. The magma chamber is mostly solid, but there have been quite a few hydrothermal eruptions and small explosions in both Biscuit Basin and Norris Geyser Basin as water in the hydrothermal system flashes to steam. Curious new blue water pool formed in Norris Geyser Basin in late 2024 to early 2025 via a series of small explosions that threw out rock and excavated a small crater. This sort of activity is nothing new, as thermal features are commonly activating and going quiet across Yellowstone National Park. But it's a great reminder about how dynamic the system is, and also how important it is to have monitoring instruments in place. During the month of February 2026, the University of Utah seismograph stations, which monitors and operates the Yellowstone seismic network, located 74 earthquakes. The largest was a magnitude 2.4. Deformation measurements indicate a pause in uplift along the North Caldera Rim. Steamboat Geyser had one water eruption on February 27th, and nearby Aquinas Geyser, quiet since 2020, erupted about 40 times during the month. Yellowstone volcanoes remains at normal background levels of activity.
Headwaters is supported by the Glacier National Park Conservancy.
My name is Elise Bowman, Sergeant, Troop K, 9th Cavalry. Today the sun come up, and it come up strong, burning through the treetops, and it lit up the world around me. And I saw the trail ahead of me, and I'm riding like we always do. And there was just the wind, just the sound of the wind in the sky and the sound of my horse and me breathing as we moved along the trail. And I started thinking that this is what freedom must feel like. Never felt freedom when I was a sharecropper growing up in South Carolina. Never knew about freedom when my mother and my daddy had been enslaved. Freedom was this wind. Freedom was this rain. Freedom was being pushed up into the sky by these mountains beneath my feet and the rain coming down. That was freedom. I couldn't find it in South Carolina. I couldn't find it where I enlisted in Nebraska, but now I got it, and I don't know if I could ever let it go. How do you let go of freedom when you hold it for the first time?
Welcome to Headwaters, a show about how Glacier National Park is connected to everything else. We're calling this season Becoming. It's not a complete history, but a series of stories about how Glacier National Park became what it is today. Landscape and history are inseparable. No history can be understood apart from the place in which it happens. And like landscapes, histories can erode. Stories can disintegrate or be buried under the sediment of those that follow. This episode is about a story that has been poorly preserved and deeply buried. Why that happened and why it matters. It is the story of the first Black park rangers and how so much of their history has been overlaid by the grains of 1,000 others. Perry, this episode is about the Buffalo Soldiers here in Glacier.
Yes.
Get us started.
So when I think of the Buffalo Soldiers, I think of our Park Service uniforms. You guys all have one, right?
In my closet.
Of course, it's pretty iconic and not very breathable, but the gray shirt, green pants and sweater, and then the big flat hat.
Well, did you know that those are based on the hats worn by the Buffalo Soldiers?
No.
And just to spell that out, Buffalo Soldiers were regiments of African American soldiers in the Army.
Right, and they were essentially the first park rangers in the years before the Park Service was formed. And we still wear their hats.
Huh, I didn't know that.
So, give us the background. How did these Black regiments of Army soldiers come about?
Well, basically, segregation. After the Civil War, the Army created regiments for Black soldiers to serve in, and they had to be separate from the ones that white soldiers served in.
But still, I suppose they were led by white officers, right?
Yeah, although there is a famous exception, Charles B. Young. He was a West Point grad who was acting superintendent of Sequoia National Park in 1903, and he's the first Black superintendent of a park.
So they're soldiers in the Army, but they're working in the national parks because the National Park Service, it doesn't exist yet.
Right. And so there are national parks, Yellowstone, Sequoia, Yosemite,
Glacier.
But there are no park rangers yet. And that doesn't happen until 1916 when the NPS is formed.
So, what were they doing in parks at the time?
Well, they were doing a lot of similar things to what park rangers do now. They built roads and trails. They did firefighting work. They kept out vandals and poachers, all that kind of stuff.
But outside of those park ranger duties, I'm sure they had other missions, right?
Right. But back in those early days, this is post-Civil War, the racial climate back east isn't great. So for the most part, they were sent on assignments out west.
Okay, so the thought was less people, less prejudice, I guess, right?
Yeah, for the most part. But that doesn't mean it wasn't complicated. And so in addition to being proto-park rangers, a lot of their assignments were in the Indian Wars in the late 1800s. So they're fighting against indigenous people who are resisting being confined to reservations.
So, there's just a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Right. They also did peacetime and exploratory missions too, including spending some time here in Glacier.
Really?
Yeah, they were here in 1910 fighting fires during the Big Burn, and they were also part of a couple early expeditions before this was even a park, including the Ahern expedition. One of the best surviving accounts of this expedition is from G.E. Culver, the geologist they brought along, who starts his report by describing the group.
The party consisted of 2 mountaineers, 2 prospectors, 2 Indian guides, a squad of soldiers black as ebony, and the rider. All were mounted and well armed. 30 days' rations were carried.
So Culver, this guy is your main source for this story. He was the team's scientist, and he kept a record of the trip that you're looking at.
Yeah, he recorded kind of the broad strokes of the adventure, but it's like 2 pages of adventure and 15 pages of geology. But through his writing and his sketches of the mountains, you can start to reconstruct where they went and why. I had an actor read some excerpts from the report.
The object of the expedition was to find, if possible, a pass over the main range, farther north than any then known, to map the course of the streams and the principal Indian trails.
So roughly, they went up the east side trying to find a pass over the mountains. They tried Many Glacier with no luck and then kept trying further north.
I'm not surprised they had trouble finding a pass. The mountains here, they're glacially carved, they're famously steep.
Yeah. So this expedition of about 15 people travels several hundred miles across the park and in a big loop around northwest Montana over 57 days.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever backpacked more than maybe a couple nights at a time.
Yeah, me neither. So while it would have been quite an adventure to retrace their whole journey, I decided to just follow their footsteps where they crossed the Continental Divide, probably the most challenging day of their trip. And today, it's called Ahern Pass. It takes a solid day of hiking to get to Ahern Pass, if not a couple days. And I'm heading out with Michael and Gabby to see it for myself. If you want to figure out what you don't know, go hiking without any cell service. As soon as you can't look something up, you realize how little you understand. And as I hike, I'm realizing how little I know about the soldiers themselves. Why aren't there any first-hand accounts from them? What do they think of this place?
My name is Shelton Johnson, and I currently work as the Community Engagement Specialist for Yosemite National Park.
Shelton is one of the most renowned and respected rangers in the Park Service. He appeared in Ken Burns' National Parks documentary, and he's one of the foremost experts on this history. He's studied, portrayed, and written about buffalo soldiers for decades, including the first-person narrative that began this story, which was a clip from his podcast series, A Buffalo Soldier Speaks. And so based on your research, can you speculate, like, what their experience was like? Like, what did they think of the landscape? What did they...
Yeah, no, I think that they felt what most people feel. It's a universal sentiment, if you will, to be impressed by a landscape that is literally overwhelming. That happened in Yosemite, it happened in Yellowstone, it certainly would have happened in Glacier National Park, because the landscape itself sparks that sense of wonder. And I think that's a human trait that is universal.
The morning when we looked out of our tents, the fog was slowly drifting away, and glimpses of the lofty peaks could be had through rifts in the fog. The effect was quite striking.
This was one of the earliest mapping expeditions of the region, long before the park existed. They climbed peaks, made camp, and spent weeks in this rugged mountain ecosystem. It's the sort of trip that people take today to get away from it all, to escape everyday life.
The difference would be that they lived in and operated in a virulently racist time period. When you're part of an expedition, there's a certain level of interdependence and respect that has to be there in order for it to function properly, in order for everyone to benefit from that association.
If you've ever been camping or backpacking with a group, you can understand this sort of teamwork. You figure out who carries what, who sets up the tent, who cooks the food.
A few ducks, grouse, and ptarmigan paid our cookhouse a visit, as did numerous fine trout. Of large game, we secured 1 bighorn and 16 mountain goats. The young of the latter are very fine eating. The old bucks taste of musk.
So, and as you get to know people, you see beyond, to a great degree, ethnicity, you see beyond gender, But be that as it may, they were still, quote unquote, colored soldiers of that time.
America's prejudices followed them everywhere, even into the wilderness.
If you did something that was done very well, you did that in spite of your race. If you failed at a task, you failed at that task because of your race. But race was always part of that dynamic. You were viewed fully through the lens of race and through the lens of class. And there wasn't an escape from it at any point.
At one point, the group reached a dead end, a high-walled mountain basin, where they met a group of Stoney Indians, also called the Nakota people. Ahern loaned their chief his rifle, and the chief gave them directions. And this wasn't the first time they'd encountered indigenous people on the expedition. By one account, they shared a third of their rations along the way with Blackfeet people. But elsewhere, regiments of buffalo soldiers had been fighting wars against tribal nations, most famously in the Southwest, fighting the Apache.
I have often wondered what the buffalo soldiers thought of interacting with the indigenous people. Would they have felt like a solidarity with another oppressed people?
When you read a lot of the colored newspapers of that time period, there was certainly a sentiment that why should we aid and abet the theft of a land from another group of people who are not that dissimilar from ourselves. Dissimilar certainly in terms of culture, but in terms of the racial attitudes of the time, they were all cast into the same box. But at the same time, there were African Americans who felt that by enlisting in the United States Army and potentially sacrificing their life, it was almost like, we have done this for you, for this nation. And so it was an investment in the future by potentially sacrificing yourself for a nation that did not recognize the fullness of your humanity. Perhaps the fullness of that humanity would be recognized for your children.
While this expedition was a peaceful one, it was still dangerous. Following the advice of the Stoney Indians, the party set out to climb the Rocky Mountain Pass ahead of them, Ahern Pass. Here's Lieutenant Ahern's report from that day.
August 22nd. As I led the pack train out this morning, I felt extremely anxious as there were several places on the trail where a misstep meant certain death. At one place, we climbed a narrow and very steep rock 15 feet high in which we had to cut steps. We led our most troublesome animals over this. My feelings were indescribable when I started up this rock, not knowing what the horse would do. The ledge was about 18 inches wide. On the lower side was a fall of 1,900 feet.
I can only imagine riding a horse through this kind of terrain, but Shelton doesn't have to. He's done reenactments of buffalo soldier patrols in Yosemite on horseback, in full uniform with saddles and gear of the period.
Why did you choose to wear the uniform, to ride on horseback? Why was that important to you, and what did you learn from it?
I chose that pathway because I wanted to not just see the history from the outside looking in, the way that you look through a window at a world that there's a partition between you and that world. I wanted to put myself into the history. And the best way to do that would be to do what they did and to wear the uniform that they wore, to ride a saddle that they might have ridden. And when you're on a horse and you look straight down, all you see is the horse. The horse is blocking the view of the ground beneath your feet. And when you're 12 feet above the ground and you look over, you just see an abyss if you're going on a trail along a canyon wall. You can talk about it, but it's better if you live it. And if you live it, then you really feel it. And if you feel it, then it's you. You've become the past that you're interpreting. And that's what I wanted. That's why I did that. And it did deepen my experience, and it did deepen my perception of this entire history.
To deepen my experience and perception of this history, I have to live it. I wanted to go to Ahern Pass.
The Indians called us Buffalo Boy. Buffalo Boy. Buffalo Boy.
Hi. Where are we?
We're almost at Ahern Pass. Very close. But not quite.
How are you feeling right now?
Tired, hot, a bit out of breath. Pretty excited about the view.
It's been a long hike, but since I'm being recorded, I'm trying to act like I'm not too out of breath.
Look around. What do you see?
I see a snowfield, this flat, grassy pass. Sheep! There's like, oh my God, there's like a dozen of them. Are those little baby sheeps? I love them.
We finally made it to Ahern Pass. The mountains on either side are towering and impenetrable, but the pass itself is a low point between them. A small meadow full of wildflowers and tiny trees with a view down to Helen Lake and the plains beyond. There's even a trail up here now on the west side, but that's not the side the Buffalo Soldiers came up.
How steep do you think it is down to Helen?
I don't know. Let's go peek over the edge if we can not fall off of it.
Their route, basically a cliff.
Ooh, this is very steep. Ah! Michael! Don't go so close to the edge.
Oh my God. Oh!
I know.
No way.
I'm flabbergasted at trying to take horses up here. This is absurd.
That's a lot steeper than I expected.
Yes. I thought there would be these sort of grassy green slopes with bare grass, and that can be tough to traverse. And there was maybe one rock ledge that they had to climb over or something, and that's what they cut steps into. But this is just a vertical cliff.
Glaciers carved this valley, leaving behind a steep rock wall below the pass. It's perfect for cliff-dwelling bighorn sheep, but a terrifying place to take a horse. The slope rises sharply from the lake, turning into a network of ledges covered in crumbling rock that clatters loose at the slightest nudge. Ahern Glacier looms to the north, and the landscape feels alive, the geology an active force.
We're looking down at Helen Lake, and I see Elizabeth Lake in the distance. And I mean,
Ahern Pass is 2,000 feet above the lake at its foot, and the summit wall on either side of the pass was estimated to be at least 1,500 feet more. The entire force had worked 2 days in making a trail from the foot of the talus slope to the summit of the pass. The ascent is very steep and was made with difficulty.
I did not imagine it would look like this.
Well, knowing that they had horses and stuff, I definitely imagined it to be a bit more gradual.
Yeah. Like if I looked at this, like could I get down this or up this? I'd be like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I would definitely need a helmet.
I don't know that this is the most hopeful way to get across.
No, I'd be like, maybe let's try Canada instead. How about Logan Pass? It definitely gives me a newfound respect for what they were doing here and their skill to navigate in a place like this. Because they still had hundreds of miles of journeying left in this expedition, but I think this was probably the toughest point.
It makes me feel like really reflective, because this was
1890.
1890.
Yeah, 20 years before the park was even established. So in a way, their presence probably hastened or contributed to the eventual formation of the park. But yeah, it was 132 years ago. And so, it's pretty cool to know that they walked right through this spot.
Visiting Ahern Pass was the first time I felt close to this story that so far I'd only read about. Retracing their steps feels like another way of reaching out, in the same way that Shelton has tried to understand the Buffalo Soldiers by writing and performing from their perspective.
But around here, I notice these rocks got a tendency to remember everything that's ever happened to them. This place got a tendency to remember everything that has ever happened to it. Nothing.
It's easy to think of the backcountry here as a place where, you go to get away from people. But I don't know, it's been really cool to think about all the people that have been here before me and all the stories that this landscape contains.
And we call that an echo. We call that something over your shoulder that makes you pull back and look quick to see if you can catch it. But nothing that ever comes through this place is ever forgotten. And you ain't got to lie down in a bedroll for too many nights before you realize that it's all being remembered and it's all being held on.
In a way, it feels less lonely to be out here when you think of all the other people who've come here before me.
So I'm wondering this. Will this place remember me? Will it remember my shadow cast on the earth? Will it remember the sound of my horse as it moved through that canyon? Will that be remembered?
Every place has a history, and history has a place too. But most people have never been to Ahern Pass, and most people don't know this story. If history can be eroded, some rocks are harder than others, more resistant to wearing away. Some layers of history become bedrock, common knowledge that we all share. Or they crystallize into something easily found, like when a place is named for a person. Like George Patrick Ahern, the expedition leader. A peak, a creek, a glacier, and, of course, a pass are all named for him. The white leader of this diverse group that mapped this section of the park. His story might not be common knowledge, but his biography isn't hard to find either.
Can you tell that story and talk about, how you talked about expanding the frame?
Yeah, and that's the photograph of Theodore Roosevelt next to John Muir in May of 1903 at Glacier Point. And then I discovered through my research that in 1903, Yosemite and Sequoia National Parks were protected by the 9th Regiment of Cavalry, one of the Buffalo Soldier regiments. And so since the official escort for Theodore Roosevelt at that time, for President Roosevelt, were these African-American troops that belonged to the 9th Cavalry, they're there. And yet there's no photographic evidence of them being there. And so when I give my performance, I share that story, I talk about how a soldier might be standing there and being within 10 or 15 feet of the president, and they get kind of moved. No, could you guys move back? Could you move over there? You're in the picture. The picture is a focus on Theodore Roosevelt and John Muir. The picture is not supposed to capture the African-American soldiers who are there, who are actually protecting the park all summer long. And so the question then becomes, who also, throughout history, who are the folks that have been pushed away to the boundaries, to the frontier of that light that tries to capture a moment in time? And frequently, it's women, and frequently, it's people of color. And that's how history is lost.
What I like about kind of how you tell that story is that you don't need to rewrite history. You're expanding the frame. You're expanding our understanding of what happened in these moments that we think we already know about.
Yeah, that's what it really is. It's if you look at it from the point of view of a tapestry, the threads, those colorful threads of ethnicity, were always there. It's just that the perception that we have of that tapestry has literally been put into black and white. And the black part's not there. The red part's not there. These other colors that were always present weren't there. And if that became and established the template for our perception of who was in the West at that time, then we've been gifted with a distortion.
Buffalo boy. Buffalo boy. The Indians called us Buffalo boy.
I was also curious about some of the structural reasons that this kind of distortion might happen again and again. I reached out to Anthony Wood, a historian who has focused on Black history in Montana. I started by asking him why stories about people of color, like the Buffalo Soldiers, and especially the ones on this expedition, can be so hard to find in history. Because that's one of the things I've been wondering about with the Buffalo Soldiers is like, we don't really have many of those primary sources. So it's like, what existed in the first place and what is preserved over time or not?
So in this particular case, I'm fairly confident in saying there is a high likelihood that everyone involved was probably literate. There are obviously a handful of Black soldiers from these divisions that were very eloquent writers and really, and more so, excellent storytellers. But those are stories that certainly were existing. The primary sources, the letters of this is what we did today, even if they were short, certainly existed at one point, probably on a fairly large scale.
So then what affects whether those are preserved over time or not, like whether we have those today?
Right. Well, there's the very practical matter of whether or not families, a lot of working class, people did not keep papers in the same way that wealthier or upper class people did. But it's also probably something else. I think that by the time you get into the 20th century, the narratives, the stories that have been taken up and carried about what types of people went out and, quote unquote, conquered the untamable wilderness and so on, and the role that soldiers often played in this is a very racialized one, and it's predominantly the figure of a white, hyper masculine, man who's going out and is
that mountain man.
That mountain man.
And so you're kind of saying that, like, if people had these letters, maybe they were their parents or their grandparents from when they were in the Buffalo Soldiers out in the West, that wouldn't seem like it would fit into the narrative. It wouldn't seem like something important that maybe they should preserve, that it wasn't part of that history.
Right. Yeah.
So one way that some histories erode away is when the keepers of those stories don't recognize their importance. Sometimes because the stories don't fit into the dominant narrative. Anthony has studied the Black community of historic Helena, Montana, but since there are so few firsthand accounts from early Black Montanans, he's often looked to other sources, like Black-owned newspapers.
In my case, I spent a lot of time working with and relying on the 3 Black newspapers in town, 2 of which were incredibly useful, but they also gave a window into a type of social history, the everyday lives, which I'm also really fascinated with, that just does not exist anywhere else outside of one person's perspective in, maybe a journal or a diary. And that's these sections of the paper that are like the community notes, or they sometimes in Butte, the Butte newspaper, they called them the dope book, where they just do funny, sometimes serious, sometimes just newsy briefs. This person went hiking today, they caught this many fish, or, this person went over and had, lunch in Helena.
But these Black newspapers were only in print for a limited amount of time.
1 year, it's 8 months in 1894, 1 year in 1902, and then from 1906 to 1912.
Wow.
And
very limited.
It narrows my scope to what I study, certainly.
So for all the rest of those years, outside the handful that those Black newspapers operated, often the sources you end up with are from white writers, white journalists, white expedition leaders.
That if you were to read them and try and reconstruct what life looks like for a daily Black Montanan, those sources just simply can't speak to it. The topography of the source world, it's not neutral. It has real and perceptible biases to it.
Anthony uses landscape as a way to explain these aspects of studying history, especially the ideas of sedimentation and erosion.
Landscape is the dominant metaphor for the study of race in the United States. We say the racial landscape, and it's just an assumed metaphor.
So how does that fit for you into the historical record? How do you apply those terms?
So the way I apply the idea of erosion and sedimentation is to focus on the way that stories are told or not told. A story that is, left aside and not told, we can think about it as being eroded. It sets us into certain ways of thinking about the past and about thinking about what really matters, who really belongs, who's really at home in this place. Is this something that exists because it fits the pattern, or it fits the channel where the water is flowing most easily.
Every time we tell our national story, some things are being added, while others are being forgotten. Covered over by stories fresher in our memories, ones we choose to tell instead.
Erosion can take place in multiple speeds and durations. It can be fast and enormous, like a flood that just rips everything out, and you get, the scablands of eastern Washington. Or it can
a
be
building is
slow and
demolished.
glacial, and it can just take a very long time, and you can have just an imperceptible change over such a long generation or more.
Like a story that's not told, that's not passed on, and slowly forgotten.
Yeah. And the way I'm experiencing this landscape right now is both as something that is in the past and changing in the present. And the way that it is changing in the present is because of the past.
When I looked out from Ahern Pass, I saw U-shaped valleys carved by glaciers during the last ice age. But the glaciers followed those paths because rivers and streams already flowed there. Today, the glaciers are gone, but Ahern Creek flows down the valley those glaciers left behind. Everything in geology, and I'd argue in history, is shaped by what came before.
It's happening in the moment that you're studying it. It's happening, in the 1890s. Then it happens again.
It's like the sands are always shifting.
Yeah, and so how do you study that?
I'm a geologist, so
Yes.
I love this.
I'm glad that, I wonder if that was why.
And I love thinking about geology this way, too. It's like people think about geology as something that happened in the past, but it's still happening all the time.
Exactly.
So many of these choices happened in the past. What sources or places that people and institutions choose to preserve, which stories are told or not told. So, what are the consequences of forgetting them?
The past isn't dead. It isn't even past. That's the William Faulkner quote that I've often used. It lives on into the present. And that is one of the problems that we have today, is that we do not fully see the challenges and the iniquities that exist in the past, which is why so many people do not understand the anger that exists today, that you see and hear in the newspapers among people of color, among African Americans in particular, but also among Native Americans, is rooted in the iniquities of the past. But the past it's still here. It's still happening today. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a modern day Black Lives Matter movement. It's rooted in the perception that what happened in the past is continuing into the present.
And these choices about how we represent history not only affect how we view the past and understand the present, but they're still being made every day. You've spent probably the better part of your career telling these stories, specifically the Buffalo Soldier story, these stories that we don't otherwise get to hear.
Yes.
Why is that? Why have you devoted your career to that?
Well, because of the cultural perception that is literally held by African Americans today. African Americans in general feel that, national parks, that's not something that we do. That's something white folks do. We don't do that. And they have that perception because of what we just talked about, because they've not read in a history book about the role of African Americans in the Trans-Mississippi West, going all the way back to Lewis and Clark. I mean, that is our Odyssey. That's our Homer and that's our Virgil. It starts out with Lewis and Clark in 1803. The fact that there was a person of color that was part of that expedition, specifically an enslaved person, Clark's manservant, who became invaluable to the success of that expedition. That's something that should be shared in every classroom and every school in the United States, because then all children would grow up with this vision that is inclusive rather than a vision that is exclusive.
It matters who tells the story. This is the question of representation, but it's also a question of history.
This is Dr. Carolyn Finney.
I call myself a storyteller, in part because I stand at the intersection of the arts, education, and lived experience to talk about issues of race, place, belonging, the environment, justice, all the good stuff, and a few things that are hard.
I wanted to talk to one more person to bring this story into the present day. For 8 years, Carolyn served on the National Park System Advisory Board, and she's the author of the book Black Faces, White Spaces. There's a quote in her book that says, "The power of representation lies in its ability to shape today's reality through the reality of the past." Dr. Finney explained that if you exclude the histories of certain people from national parks, then you're less likely to see those people in national parks.
And so I can't talk about the past without talking about the present. There could be 100 reasons for reasons why the Buffalo Soldier story took so long to come to light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it is going to be Jim Crow. Part of it is going to be we're living in a country where, and I'm only talking about Black folks here, that Black folks weren't seen as fully human, until sometime in the last 50 years, but not just Black people. All kinds of people from all walks of life have been challenged in terms of their skin color, their gender, where they live, how much money they have in their pockets, their religious beliefs. I mean, we're still doing that today. And that's going to matter. So when I look at the history of Buffalo Soldiers or any group of people and wonder why it's taken this long for them to get there, I understand, the first question I ask is, well, who was doing the telling?
Mm-hmm.
Representation is important. If you leave a whole lot of stuff out, then I'm only getting part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere that means I am only partially who I can become.
What do you think the role of national parks and public lands is in interpreting history and in exploring this relationship of people to place and landscape and land and environment?
Well, public lands for whom? That's why I say it's really, and I always tell people it's not like you crossed over into a public land and suddenly there was no racism.
Mm-hmm.
And people carry those beliefs with them, whether they work in a park or are visiting a park or not, right? The public lands are for everyone is a really nice sentiment.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about? Who's claiming that? Where is that? I think I understand the common good, the idea of land being for the public. This is for all of us. And I think it sits on a complicated history of blood, sweat, and tears for real, And I think the only way that public lands can really serve us all is that we engage that blood, sweat, and tears as part of the story. This is where our redemption lies. For me, the beauty of public lands is that we can actually find redemption in who we've been and who we are right now. The public lands give us that opportunity.
To keep these histories from eroding, we need to do the work of preserving them.
I think when I look at the Buffalo Soldier story from the inside out, what becomes obvious to me, what becomes perceivable to me, is that there are so many stories involving women, involving other people of color, other communities, that are not told or not heeded, and that those stories could have a profound impact on how we see ourselves and how we see our own country.
I think in parks like this, the history is often left out of the landscape. A big, beautiful park like Glacier that people think of for the mountains and the rivers and the bears, all of those things are part of the story, and so are people, and so are the history.
Yes. Yeah.
All those stories need to be told because we are not the America we think we are. We're still on the road to becoming the nation that we think we already are. We're not there yet. And people who feel that we are there yet do not understand the fullness of our history.
That in and of itself should make us recognize and revere the idea of public lands so much more, not avoid the telling of that history because it's not a pretty telling. That should make it cost people something for us to be able to call a piece of land public. And we as the public have a responsibility and an accountability to that idea of public lands. That's the conversation I want to have around public lands.
And that is what's powerful about telling these stories. It makes American history, reveals American history to be much deeper than we give it credit for being. And anything that results in a deepening of light, a deepening of sound, a deepening of color, results in a clearer vision of who we are as human beings, who we are as Americans.
Headwaters is a production of Glacier National Park with support from our partner, the Glacier National Park Conservancy. This season of Headwaters was made by Daniel Lombardi, Perry Sassnett, Michael Feist, and Gabby Esavari. Frank Wallen wrote and performed our music, and Eric Carlson created this season's cover art. Extra special thanks this episode to Shelton Johnson, Carolyn Finney, Anthony Wood, Daniel Brewster, and the Black Park Ranger Experience. Also, thank you to Ed Whittle, Tim Stevenson, and Frank Gerard. We could not have made Season 3 without Lacey Kowalski, Melissa Sloddick, Sierra Mendelko, Brent Rowley, Darren Lewis, the Glacier National Park Archives team, and we relied on so many great resources from the Montana Historical Society, so thanks to them too. Thanks for listening.
Next time on Headwaters.
The history of homesteading and allotment in northwest Montana.
Everybody thinks it's so simple, but it gets so complicated.
There were strong personalities, and they disagreed about a lot of stuff, but in the winter, you get along.
To William Howard Taft, June 1910. There is 1,353 flathead that don't want to be open.
That's next time on Headwaters. So, Andrew.
Yes.
Headwaters couldn't happen without the support of the Glacier Conservancy.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys also help with so many other projects in the park.
Yeah. One I wanted to talk about today is the project to build an accessible trail around Swift Current Lake. Swift Current Lake is right in front of the Many Glacier Hotel. It's probably one of the most popular trails in the Many Glacier Valley.
Hiked it many times.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And we're working on a long-term partnership over the next few years with the MCC, the Montana Conservation Corps, to make a wheelchair accessible trail all the way around so that people with mobility impairments can enjoy that lake and that beautiful area just like the rest of us.
That sounds like a great project.
Yeah, we think the national park should be available to everyone, so we're really excited to make it happen.
And if people want to learn more, how can they do that?
They should visit our website, and they can find us at glacier.org.
Goats. They're the very symbol of Glacier National Park, and there is almost no better place in the park to see them than at Oberlin Bend. This section of the Going to the Sun Road travels along the cliffs and past the waterfalls just west of Logan Pass. The rock ledges and abundant vegetation provides ideal habitat for the shaggy white mountain goat. Watch for the little ones skipping about the rock cliffs in areas that would terrify most humans. Within days of being born, they are following mom up incredibly steep slopes. Sometimes the goats wander right down to the road or through the parking lot, however, so please remember that all park wildlife is wild. Although they may seem tolerant, they can also cause injury. Do not feed or approach them. Please help us keep wild goats wild and visible for years to come. Oberlin Bend also provides one of the best views of the Going to the Sun Road. Park your car and take the short boardwalk to the viewing platform. The sweeping vista of the garden wall with the Going to the Sun Road snaking along its cliffs is impressive. On a clear day, you can see all the way to the high peaks near the border with Canada, and, if you know where to look, you can spot Granite Park Chalet on a ridge high above the loop. Portions of this boardwalk were designed to be accessible by wheelchair, and if you notice, it's made out of a metal grate material. A former park superintendent saw similar walkways in parks in Australia and brought the idea back to Glacier on his return. The grate allows snow to fall through the walkway and helps relieve the pressure of the winter snows, and it also helps sunlight to penetrate below and maintain native vegetation under the boardwalk.
Headwaters is brought to you by the Glacier National Park Conservancy.
Picture a National Park Service ranger station. What does it look like? Maybe a big log cabin with a mossy pitched roof and a creaky screen door? Glacier does have plenty of those, but my office is in park headquarters, which has some strong mid-century middle school energy. And working here, I'm always happening upon obsolete relics of bygone eras. Handwritten memos, ink stamps, a fax machine. I haven't found a typewriter yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to find one lurking in a drawer. Only a few decades ago, people in this building used those things all the time. But like a lot of people, many rangers' jobs have changed pretty dramatically in the last 40 years. Mine definitely has. But in this episode, we're spending a day with a ranger whose office, equipment, and duties haven't changed much at all in 40 or even 100 years.
Can you drag this dead goat out of the waterfall? That's a weird one. The marmot's living in the toilet again.
Meet wilderness ranger Laura Funk. She has long, sandy blonde braids and bright blue eyes. She wears the park uniform with a little mud on her boots, and she loves to laugh at the absurdities of life in the backcountry. I immediately want to be her friend.
My laundry is a bucket with a metal plunger that people call an Alaska Maytag. And I think it gets the clothes cleaner, but I don't think people necessarily think my clothes are clean.
Alongside her colleagues, General and Tank, both horses, and Ellen the mule, Laura helps steward and patrol the Belly River Valley of the park.
Yeah, if someone were to say, like, picture a historic ranger station, an iconic valley, it's Belly River.
One of her favorite things about the Belly is that there are no roads. So unlike the rest of Glacier's ranger stations, you can't drive here.
The Belly River Ranger Station is located 6 miles into Glacier's wilderness. You either have to hike in or ride a pony.
I interviewed Laura in the ranger station, but also while she lugged gear around and rode a horse, who occasionally took an interest in my microphone.
Would you like to be interviewed, General? Hello, hello. He went for it. Was he gonna eat it?
Just sniffing.
We have 2 rangers, myself and Allison, the commissioned ranger. There's a trail crew, which varies in size, 2 to 4. And we have 3 head of stock, and that makes up our entire staff.
The Belly River Ranger Station is a brown log cabin, a Park Service specialty, with white window frames and a flagpole out front. It sits between a creek and a wide-open meadow where the horses graze, and its covered porch faces west, towards steep-sided rocky peaks. It's a very traditional scene, and so is life out here.
So I live off-grid. I live in a 1-room cabin with a propane stove, and we do get running water for a few months of the season. Otherwise, we have to haul our water from the creek. I do not have a bathroom connected to my house. I have to walk to the outhouse.
Yeah, I mean, you start to lose track of time and age and everything out here. Some of that kind of stuff fades away. Because then you're like, is it 2020 or is it 1920? There's elk running around and there's a fence that looks just about the same. I'm reading books and hauling my water from the creek.
When I tell my friends I work for the Park Service, I think this might be what they picture. But in a lot of ways, the agency is looking to the future, trying to modernize our infrastructure, lower our carbon emissions, and tell our stories differently. Parks have podcasts now, for example. It seems like a vestige of the past to come to the Belly and see Laura still riding horses, packing gear on mules, and living in the backcountry. And honestly, I wonder how long this way of life, this type of ranger, can last. But I know I want to experience it before it's too late. I'm Perry, and you're listening to Headwaters, a show about how Glacier National Park is connected to everything else. And today, I'm tagging along for a day in the life with the person who might have the coolest job in the park.
All right, today we've got the horses and mules saddled, and we're gonna head out, take care of a ranger business.
Today's ranger business is going up toward Helen Lake to pick up and pack out some leftover supplies. Michael and I walk in front of the stock while Laura rides, since apparently they prefer to follow us.
Come on, keep up with the humans, keep up with the humans.
Apparently, horses have abandonment issues, so even though we didn't really need both Tank and General, everyone came along for the ride.
All right, how does everyone feel today? Okay? Good? Good? Yep.
For most park staff, our ranger business is pretty specific. Giving a campfire program, studying plants, managing the park's budget, making a podcast. But for Laura, almost anything could be her ranger business on a given day.
I'm a wilderness ranger, and I'm specially trained on the Wilderness Act and wilderness values and character. But in the end, my day-to-day is a lot of general ranger duties, whether it's bear management, EMS, maintenance, pulling weeds.
There are specialists for each of these things. Bear biologists, search and rescue, trail crew, invasive plant crew. But Laura and other rangers like her pitch in to keep things going day to day.
Well, it takes a whole team to manage Glacier, right? That's why we have the experts. And so I'll call them in if we have something major. I can fix a toilet, but if the whole outhouse goes down, I gotta call trail crew.
A lot of people talk about the quote, "Jack of all trades, master of none." But the full quote is, "Jack of all trades, master of none. Better something than nothing done." And that's kind of what I live by out here.
And this is much the same as the ranger business that rangers have been doing in the Belly River for decades. Take this entry from an old logbook in 1994.
September 14th, 1994. Patrol with Bob on stock to Elizabeth Lake Head to deliver additional gear and supplies to the trail crew. Dug out the fire pit and replaced the campground map with an updated version. Also pulled another handful of hawkweed. Chuck Cameron.
Every day when Laura gets back from the field, she writes down the day's activities and events in a big green government-issued logbook. She and her predecessors have been doing this since the earliest days of the ranger station here. From Chuck 30 years ago to some of the earliest Belly River Rangers back to 1929.
June 5th, 1929. Station to Red Gap Pass and return. Distance 16 miles. Mounted. Object, cleaning trail and looking over trail conditions. Game scene. 1 mountain goat, 2 deer, 1 elk. Weather clear. Temperature 41 degrees at 7 a.m. Joe Himes.
But these days, this type of work is becoming more and more rare. Even this ranger station used to be staffed in the winter, but hasn't been for a long time.
Spots like mine that are remote I think there's less and less these days.
Glacier has only a handful of wilderness rangers and just a single backcountry ranger station. And throughout the Park Service, these kinds of places and the people with the skills to staff them are disappearing. In addition to all the odd jobs Laura does, a huge part of her job is talking to park visitors, most of whom are on multi-day backpacking trips. As we hiked up the trail past Dawn Mist Falls, a scenic and loud waterfall, we ran into our first hiker of the day.